Oh man. Alright, so let's open this up. What time is it? 7:09. Alright, so what's today's date? The 7th. Alright, so September 7th, 7:09. Ta-da, we're open. Yay. So what do we got for minutes? Did we all go through them? We got a pile here. Mary, I saw you went through. You saw a few corrections.
I made edits to minutes from February 16th through, it was May 11th, is that right, Samantha?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe that's all we have up to. Yes.
Okay.
So I am in favor of the minutes with those changes that I submitted.
Okay. You guys get to look at them? I just did look at them. I didn't pick up on anything. I didn't pick up on anything.
Yeah, I mean, I gave you some corrections, but I don't remember which ones they were.
Yep, and I believe I did send those on to Chrissy, so she should have them.
So we're just going through May 11th, is that
Yes.
correct?
I believe so.
Move to approve the minutes in this list up to May, including May 11th, 2024.
Second.
Alright, cool. Hands in the air.
Abstain.
Perfect. Alright, so then we're gonna, do we have any reason to move anything around, Sam?
Not that I am aware of.
Okay. So then we're gonna open up the town of Newbury, 31 Plum Island Boulevard, DEP, we don't have one yet. An NOI to convert an existing single-family dwelling into a municipal bathhouse with interior improvements, including the removal and reinstallation of the concrete entry to meet ADA access, creating an ADA accessible ramp to the town bathhouse. Cool.
So I am going to be presenting on that as the representative for Tracy Blaze, who is the applicant. Basically what we have right now is a notice of intent out to convert a existing single-family apartment home building into a set of bathrooms. So the inside of the structure will be gutted pretty much and turned into bathrooms. And outside we are going to, or we propose to construct a concrete ADA accessible ramp and deck. And I don't know if James has anything that, do you want to add anything?
No, that
That's-
covers.
That's pretty much just the quick and easy version of it.
So the only exterior work is a ramp and deck?
I believe so, yes.
It would be side, would be new siding too, but as far as,
So these are the architectural plans for it that we have. So the deck and the concrete ramp are going to be installed right here along the road going into the building. And those are the only big changes outside, other than the
the
re-siding.
cosmetic siding
Yeah.
windows.
Did we not have a project for Bathhouse recently? Was there another filing?
No, Bill presented on this, but there were some issues with, it was around the same time as the Sunset Club, so he was gonna have to revise the plans to get rid of the paved surfaces they were proposing on the backside, right?
So this is a continuation of the public hearing?
This
I
is
feel like
this is
it
not a
should be.
continuation of the public hearing. The first time that it was discussed, it was not a public hearing, so anything that happened then was not a public
Okay.
hearing. It was just a discussion amongst the commission. No abutters notifications were sent out
Okay.
at that time. I don't know 100% what happened. It happened long before I got here. We just know that there was nothing that showed that any abutters notifications had gone out
Okay.
the first time. So this is the first public hearing on the bathhouse.
And so the deck and ramp are over what surface? What's there now?
Some of it's paving, sand, and a little bit of concrete.
Okay, so it's kind of disturbed area already.
Yes.
Okay. So I would make a motion if it's not too early for the comment, since we do not have a DEP file number and we can't close the hearing tonight,
Correct.
that we continue the hearing until the next meeting?
We did want to open it up
For
to
public
any public comment,
Mhm.
and that was the only thing. That was really the big reason why we wanted to talk about it tonight.
Sure,
Because we knew we couldn't vote on it without the DEP number.
got it.
But since the notifications and everything went out, and I believe there are a couple people in here.
Great.
We
It
wanted to
sounds,
talk
if
about it.
that's the only change, it sounds minor to me, and that's,
I do have a question, just because you just said that the ramp is concrete,
Yes.
but the plan you're showing is some kind of wood deck. And I think that was part of the original discussion. I think the agent at the whole time, Bill Holt, thought that it would play better if,
So it does, this is the original plan, that does have the concrete, it does say that it's poured concrete. I did speak with the architect, I know there was a comment previously about instead of doing a concrete ramp, that it was going to be metal grating on helical piles. When I spoke with the architect a few weeks ago, she stated that there were a few issues with trying to do the helical piles. Not an architect, so I don't really know 100% what it was, but it was something to do with that the design of the helical piles, they're intended to be used for things that are much taller. So we would either have to make the ADA accessible ramp taller, which would defeat the purpose of it being ADA accessible because it would have too high of a slope or too steep of a slope. And to basically to be able to shrink the helical piles, it's not quite feasible. They are considering other options, I believe, in the event that there's a problem with the concrete ramp. But if there isn't going to be an issue with the concrete ramp, if DEP doesn't have a problem with it, it's going to be the most feasible and the easiest option to be able to do the concrete.
okay, but, my point was just simply, if we're talking a concrete ramp, the drawing needs to be revised then, is that correct? Or does that show?
No, this does show poured concrete.
The one that I found in the Dropbox was,
Point of information, it says Trek deck. So the deck is Trek on sonotubes. The ramp is concrete.
Okay.
And then the deck has 2 foot washing stations, which we have to talk
Yes.
about. Okay. So the deck is not concrete, it's Trek on sonotubes, on 5
Okay.
sonotubes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I think, let's take Mary's point though, because we can't do anything about it. So, just show of hands, who's here for this one? 1, 2, 3. Okay, cool. You wanna go in that order?
I'd like to listen first,
Oh, all right.
or if the commission has any other comments they want to make at this point.
I mean, I'm happy to wait. I've got nothing in particular that I need to talk about. So, in the spirit of sort of clearing the room and getting to everybody's points, we can't do anything, so, yeah, by all means. So yeah, just name and address for the record, and, yeah.
Sure, I'm Steve Mangin, I live in Newbury, and actually on Plum Island.
what's the address?
Excuse me?
The address?
14th Street.
Thank you.
It seems pretty clear we don't have a full a full application, and we've got something that may change dramatically, so certainly we all may want to come back later and submit some additional comments. After I listen to what the other people have to say, I might like to chime in too before the commission goes into your group discussion. But that said, I think we need to consider that we're on Plum Island, we're in the flood zone, we've got a building which already exceeds the limits imposed by the PIOD. And excuse me, sometimes I will talk about things I know are not strictly under the purview of the Conservation Commission. But I'll try and loop them back to things that are. For instance, the ADA ramp, that's going to be something that, under the rules of Newbury the Newbury building codes, decks, ramps, whatever, they all count against the footprint of a project.
So if it has anything to do with building code, that the building code doesn't have anything to do with conservation. So if we can try and focus on sticking with the conservation issues, because anything that doesn't have to do with conservation isn't really what we're here to
Is
discuss.
that discussed in planning or zoning? Where
Um,
is that discussed?
I am not 100% sure where that would be discussed, if it
Building
was
inspector.
building inspector.
So it's gonna go beyond the building inspector, Mr. Chairman, with all due respect. I find that this discussion, the last meeting, 2 meetings ago that I attended, I found that the public was very frustrated because we kind of punted back to the planning or zoning board or the building inspector. And this is a forum by which the public gets to air their concerns and their questions. And it appears to me, in my very limited experience of sitting on this board, that this gentleman has some legitimate concerns that I believe the town needs to address.
But
Okay,
right
hold
now,
on, wait,
it's
everybody,
just conservation
breathe, stop,
issues.
we're good. So, to answer everybody's points, the reason we try to keep it jurisdictional is time. You know, there's a room full of people, we gotta get to their stuff too. To the extent we can, we don't wanna talk about things that we can't talk about, right?
Agreed, Mr. Chairman.
Now, Mr. Michigan, by all means, he's been here before, he knows this circus. Like, I'm, like, go for it, in a manner of speaking. Like, yeah, if you feel it's a relevant point, I'm gonna let you air it, and, you know, in a manner of speaking, this back and forth. However correct it is, it's just a time suck. You know, let Steve have his 30 seconds to talk about the footprint, and, you know, we'll be out of here sooner.
Right, once the footprint issues are resolved, we may find we need to come back with another plan to the Conservation Commission, because you have to have a plan that's approved by Concon, maybe the planning board, the ZBA, whatever. And it would be good, I think, to have some harmony in all three. When I read through the application such as it is right now, and again, I appreciate it's not fully done, I saw a reference in the folder about an oil tank, which I couldn't find on the drawings. Maybe they are there, but certainly if there's an oil tank on the property, and I don't know whether it's going to be used all the time, but leaking oil tanks are always a big deal in any environment, but particularly on Plum Island. For all I know, it's an underground storage tank. Maybe it's not.
Yeah,
There is no oil tank on the property, correct?
yeah, and it won't be oil heat when it's all done either. It's propane now, it'll be
Maybe splits when it's done.
Well, there was a reference to it in the plan, and we can fix that out. More global issue is my understanding, though perhaps it's changed, that the whole island is designated as an area, a critical area, it's critical environmental concern. And that was a big deal during water and sewer. That may have since changed, but the status of being an EC, if it is, would need some discussion, I think. The plan makes reference to a foot wash, and I vaguely recall, for better or for worse, showers, foot washes may be a concern for the Conservation Commission. We certainly get into issues of runoff, where does the water go? Again, something that crosses, I think, between the Concon and other issues of the cost figures. You know, the building has a valuation of $86,400. And way back when the previous conservation agent was here, I believe I made the comment about how there was some concern about how spending a certain amount of money triggers the need to go up on stilts in some building projects where you're in the floodplain. And this project is in the floodplain, demarcated. So I'm really concerned about the numbers being bandied about and how I think they should trigger the need to go up on stilts and, of course, then adjust the ADA compliant route. And that's it for now, because I'm trying to keep things rolling forward.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, so then just to Steve's points, a bunch of those sound like we can we can come back to them. You know, Sam can do her homework. I know that Plum Island and the building code and the Concom can get kind of convoluted, and with what we do cover and what we don't cover, you know, square footage being one of them for some reason, but whatever.
And one thing
Yeah.
I'd like to do, from talking to Sam this morning, I understand that the building inspector is sending something into the state trying to get a waiver for some of the conditions that might otherwise be a concern. And I left a note with the building inspector asking to see it so we can see, well, what is being proposed, and is there room for public comment? And certainly I hope that the Concom takes a look at that submittal as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, but that being said, let's go down the row and see if we can sort of address lots of comments at the same time. You guys want to go next? You want to come up? Or you can sit there too if you want to carry.
Tony Matthews, Main Street. Just concerned about the fact that it's being proposed in a flood zone, basically. The fact that you guys are proposing to build an emergency egress up on 12th Street or 14th Street, because that center road floods out, and here we are spending money to build a bathroom in a flood zone that it just doesn't make sense to me. But that's up to you to see it that way too, I hope.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Leslie Matthews, 111 Main Street. I haven't attended a lot of these meetings. What I'm finding though tonight, what I'm listening to, is there's a lot of discrepancies going on. I don't think that everybody has their ducks in a row. And tonight, it almost seems as if it would have been better for you all to be here with more solid information to present to the public. And I'm not sure how it works between you and the building inspector, but perhaps a conversation with the building inspector and you would help to sew things together a little bit tighter.
Brian, can I take this one? Just as a point of clarification for the audience, the commission isn't the town. We don't represent the town. We're volunteers serving on a commission. We merely get the information that we receive from any applicant and then hear it. So just as you may be feeling one way about the information presented tonight, there's a chance we're feeling the same way. There's a chance we're not, but there's a chance we are. So I can't say about what the town should have done, but we don't represent the town in the way that Sam is representing the town as the applicant. The commission, no matter who the applicant is, we hear it, we make up our minds about how the wetland laws apply to it, and that's how we have to make our decision. So when Brian talks about jurisdiction, that's what he means, is that we can really only make decisions about the Wetlands Protection Act and the local bylaws. That's what we're constrained to. So we're always happy to listen to all input from the public, but we can only act on a very narrow window of it. And hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, so for instance, as an example, right, we didn't decide to put this here. The town is just asking for our input and, you know, regulatory review of the thing that they want to do. And, you know, even if arguably all of us think it's a terrible idea, if it's legal and jurisdictional and they meet, you know, the hurdles and hoops they have to jump over and through, then, you know, it meets that. You know, and our job is sort of the hurdles and the hoops. So, anyway, anybody else want to?
Let me just ask you this.
Oh, yeah.
What you're saying to us is that you're just here as basically consultants?
No, we are the reviewing authority under the Massachusetts
Right, so
Wetlands
you have
Protection Act
final-
and the local wetlands bylaw, Plum Island bylaw.
But do
So-
you have final say on whether it's approved or not?
No, actually Mass DEP does, so we are issuing,
go
we
by
are
your
the
advice.
issuing authority, local issuing authority. They are the ultimate issuing authority, so they have to come through us. Yep.
And again, we're reviewing it. We're not asking for it to be done. Somebody else is asking for it to be done.
I understand that part, but I feel that your presentation.
Well, it's not
is
our
making-
presentation. That's what we're trying to say. You're
Well,
saying your
You
presentation.
have to explain the presentation as being put forth to the citizens.
We no, that's the responsibility of the applicant. We can help clarify for you if you have specific questions, but it's not our role to explain
A lot of it
everything.
just seems to be a little convoluted, it just isn't coming across with any clear direction.
I mean, that's fair. That happens a lot.
It happens a lot, and I think in this case, we don't really have anything to act on because there hasn't really been a formal NOI applied, you know, that we're being brought. There's just seems like tonight has turned into an airing of grievances or questions or concern for people, which I think is fair and it is good to have that forum. But it's hard to make any concrete progress or talk about issues when we don't have real things to talk about. Yeah.
I do have a copy of the notice of intent that was sent to DEP.
Okay.
If you'd like to see it.
But it sounds like the plans are
It's
in
still wiggly.
transition still.
The plans that we have that were the ones that got submitted, so the one that I brought up,
Okay.
the architectural plan that I showed as the one that was submitted, and I have a couple site plans as well.
Okay.
And I'm sure if anyone would like to contact Samantha and get an email containing the material that's been submitted to date so that they can look at it, that can be worked out between now and the next meeting.
So I was a little confused by the beginning of this. You're saying that you have a full NOI
Yes.
submitted, but you
Yes.
don't want to present on it really tonight.
She did present it.
We did, yeah.
That was
Okay,
it.
well, that was a very-
The notice of intent has been submitted to DEP. The only reason that we can't really move forward with anything at the moment is because we don't have a DEP number, so nothing can be voted on. But we do have a notice of intent sent out to DEP, we have processed it, we have applied for it, they do have it. It's just waiting to be reviewed. And then once they review it and get back to us with any comments that they have, we can move forward with any changes with the plan that need to be made and any changes to the notice of intent, the application, and whatnot. But we do have, everything has been submitted. And the purpose of discussing it tonight, even though we can't vote on it, was to open it up to public comment and hear what people had to say, because it has been sent out, notifications have been sent out.
My only comment then, and I think maybe to what Leslie's getting at, is that if, you know, I have a very good feeling and understanding, it sounds like I think most of the commission has a good understanding of what you're presenting, because we were all here when it was presented but not presented formally. Is that what happened in June? Is what you said in the very beginning? Is that it wasn't technically advertised?
Correct, it was
So
not.
here's my issue right now, is that there's a bunch of information that I know from the presentation in May or June that helps me understand this hearing, that there's probably very few people in this room who have that information because it was not properly presented or notified then. And I feel like there's a lot of questions that I just have answers in my head from the previous presentation that nobody else in the audience probably has.
Yeah, yeah. So
that may be more what Leslie was trying to say.
yeah, so maybe Sam, do you mind starting over?
Brian, I think we probably spent enough time on this.
I think we have to, like, twice over, but
Yes.
Just to make sure
At the
that
next
for the,
meeting, we can do a full presentation of the full project plans. This is,
right,
it's a very straightforward application. What they're asking for is addition to an existing structure, which we can handle throughout the normal process and.
right. But I do just want to make sure that the folks that are here for the project at least understand, you know, what the project is.
I think
And,
it's just very hard for most people to see the plans that are projected on the screen there from in the back row there.
Yeah.
So they're going to need to have something in, plan in front of them.
Right.
Either on their own computer screen or a hard copy, so they can fully understand. what's being
so then
proposed.
what if we do this? So for you guys, so Steve, your points were fairly clear, good questions. I think you can get answers to them by the next meeting. That's not a big deal.
I have an answer to one of them right now.
Easy, great.
So with regards to the ACEC concern, this is a map that shows where the ACEC area is as determined by the Department of Natural Resources with the Massachusetts State Authority. So this is the Great Marsh area, so this is the Great Marsh ACEC. This is part of the map that shows the area that we're concerned about. As you can see right here, it says, so it says areas not within the ACEC are shaded with a gray mask. So this particular building is located right about here. So it's kind of right on the inside edge of not being in the ACEC, but it is in fact not in that, and that's the area of critical environmental concern for anyone who's unaware. So it is not in that area. So those are a little bit more differently regulated, a little bit more heavily regulated. And this location is not in that area.
And I appreciate that, and may I support what Mary was getting at in terms of making the documents more available to the public. I had a nice discussion with Sam earlier today, but back in the days of the Zoom meetings, these project plans would be available to look at on a small laptop or something like that, but one could digest them at your leisure, as opposed to having to come down here and trying to flip through. And so if you can do that, I think that would be useful.
So we are actually working on that. I don't at the moment have any access to edit the town website. We were working on that with the IT person, once he helps me get access, once I get the credentials that I need to be able to do that and I go through the training and everything for it, my plan is to, for things like town projects, large projects and things like that that draw a lot of attention, anything that's public record, we are going to make a section of the web page for conservation similar to what the planning board has. So the planning board has a similar setup where they have basically all of their public record stuff, every project that they have gets posted online. So it's nice and easy to find in public and anyone can see it. So we are working on getting that done. In the meantime, anyone who is interested in looking at it can feel free to reach out to me and I will help you get access to it one way or another.
So Sam, why don't you follow it up? What's your number, what's your email, so that these guys in the back, you know, they can send questions.
Town of Newbury Conservation Commission, it's all on the website.
Yes.
All right. Hey, I'm trying to be pleasant.
Okay.
But, anything else from the crowd, from the audience? Any other points you want to bring up or cover prior to moving on with this? Going once, going twice. Daniel.
I just kind of want to bring this up because I think it's, it'll, you know, help going forward. It's an issue I think needs to be resolved, and that's the whole question of the 50% rule, the possible waiver. We have the responsibility of
Correct, and
the bylaw, and
Right.
the 50% is in the bylaw as well as the building code. So,
correct. And I have been trying to stay in touch with Peter Bennett, the building commissioner, with regards to that. He is the one who is kind of, you know, spearheading that whole side of things, just because it has to do with building code and not necessarily a conservation issue. I know it does relate to conservation, but he is the one who is spearheading that, and I have been keeping up to date with that. As of right now, that is just something that's still in the works. They are still working on getting a variance from the state to do that.
So, you know, I just think we're certainly not going to be able to vote on this until that's resolved in some way. You know what I mean? It's bylaw, we have responsibility for the bylaw.
Correct.
So it's kind of a shared issue with the building inspector and us. So hopefully that'll be forthcoming in a reasonable period of time.
Okay. So, hearing nothing else, I think Mary put a motion on the table. Anybody want to second that one?
Sure thing.
Beautiful. All right, all in favor of moving on with the agenda and continuing this until the next meeting on the 21st? Aye. Cool. All right. Next thing that we've got CJ Doherty at 330 Fifth Street, DEP file 050-1222, minor modifications request to an existing approved order of conditions issued the 1st of August 2019 to a previous owner of the property.
Good evening, everybody.
Hi.
My name is Charles Doherty, C.J. Doherty, 14 Riley Pond Road in Lincoln, Mass., and owner of 335th Street in Newbury. So I had purchased this property. It came with DEP approvals, order of conditions, and it had a ZBA decision that had expired while the conservation and things worked out. I stuck to the existing footprint that had been approved and made some minor modifications, namely went from a pitched roof to a flat roof, which I assume will be an improvement because I want to make some green space up there that will prevent some runoff from happening immediately. The front house also had front porches on it. We've eliminated those. We've reduced, with that move, the coverage of the lot by 148 square feet. The only additional coverage we added, the rear porches used to sit 1 foot in from the corner on the back left-hand corner. We pushed that out to the edge in hopes that we could cantilever and reduce the amount of pilings we'll actually need. The structural design's still in the works, but at worst, that's the additions. We have a net reduction of dune coverage by 139 feet. Beyond that, the plans are the same, barring They've also added additional wattles that weren't shown on the approved plan.
Okay,
So the bird's eye view is reduction of front porches and a 1-foot bump out in the back left corner for a deck.
okay, cool, thank you.
Seems pretty.
All right, let's go around the horn. Let's start on this end.
It sounds like an improvement to the project, overall less impact, and unless Sam has any other comments in terms of whether the plan is actually conforming to what the applicant has presented tonight, I'm in favor.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, is this the property that does not have access to the house other than on the street?
I've obtained an easement to park elsewhere on the island.
I'm sorry?
I have an easement to park elsewhere on the island.
But you will not be able to access the home from
I
anything
don't
but
have
the
I
street?
don't have a driveway, but the house was approved by this board previously and the state without a driveway.
Okay, good. Thank you.
good, okay,
No questions.
okay. Danny?
The only thing that, when I initial look at the plan, you know, I think the buried propane tank is probably a nice thing, but it's, you know, in a V zone, I'm just unclear on the technical issues that.
There isn't
involve-
a buried propane tank.
I got the wrong hearing.
Can't find it.
Yeah. No, I don't have one, and if I can put solar in, I probably won't put a propane tank in at all.
No.
335th?
Sorry.
But I agree.
I have a hard copy of the plans.
In all likelihood, a buried propane tank will float out of the ground on Long Island.
Wrong hearing, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, take a peek.
Danny, you seeing it?
No, I don't see it on SharePoint, that's why I'm trying to,
That's, are you in the same space she is?
I believe so.
Yeah, I don't know if,
It's a small.
Thank you, sir, I
yeah, I
appreciate
don't
it.
know if we ever got, electronic copies. Did I ask you for them?
Yeah.
Okay, so I might have them, I might have just put them in the wrong place. That's entirely my fault.
Okay.
And then this is the previously approved one. You can see it there.
You guys want to see your hands?
Yep.
You know, take my hand on one of the littles, there's two of the littles, I'll pass them down.
I'll get more.
Oh,
Put them in the spokes of your bike. Maybe you can.
they're a little big for my bike, but
Yeah.
I like the
You can
idea.
fold them up. And the house that's there now is just beyond repair. We've got part of the redesign too, we're gonna do an ICF house. In large part because to bring lumber onto the site back and forth over the dunes would be a problem. But to transport the styrofoam blocks in and then pump the concrete from the street, the traveling over the dunes is
Coming
reduced
back.
probably like 8%.
So then, we're changing the vertical situation up high. Is there any vertical change below? All the piles, all the heights?
All the
gonna stay
piles are all the same, we're 2 feet above the sand, 8 feet above the sand. So by getting rid of the pitched roof and going to a flat roof with a parapet, we reduce the overall height of the building. And we're still staying at least 2 feet above sand, and then up from there.
I mean,
Again, the means of construction has changed from wood frame to ICI.
so then specifically for the order of conditions, what amendments are you asking for? Anything particular?
It's just the
Just to
reduction.
change the plan?
It's just the change of the bird's eye to reduce that front porch and the corner in the back. It's-
Right, but the rest of the order of conditions?
Everything else is the same.
All the conditions will change, we're just gonna change the plan of record?
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
works for me.
I'll quick look at the plans and summary. There's nothing on that NOI number. Is this the right NOI number?
I mean,
I believe the old one should be 1222.
Yeah, there's,
And I didn't file that NOI, I just have the
Yeah, it was,
order of
it's,
conditions.
I believe it was Brian and Kelly who were the original
oh.
applicants for it.
That included some arrangements with the town to use the right-of-way for construction, is that right?
It certainly looks like we're putting mats down on the right of way,
Right, and then that gets
removed and restored and nourished.
So nothing's changed on that?
Nothing's changing on that front.
just plan of record.
Will those mats allow public access to the beach?
Yeah, I don't plan to take that away. So far, I've made good inroads with neighbors. I don't plan on saying, you gotta walk. So, yeah, no, I'm not gonna take away access to the beach.
Okay, good.
All right, I've got nothing to, yeah. Anybody wanna make a motion on this one?
Make a motion to accept these changes as a minor modification to the order of conditions issued under file number 0501222.
Brilliant. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent.
Sweet,
Cool.
thank you very much.
Thank you. All right,
Thank
next,
you.
next thing we've got going, Don Johnson, 156 Boston Road, DEP, we don't have a file number yet, and this is an NOI to replace a septic tank.
We do actually have the file number is 1365. We got that today.
Okay. Any comments? Nothing? Nothing from DEP?
Not as far as I could tell, no.
Okay.
I just had one go through for a different town, and it took about a week and a half, 2 weeks to get a number and then get the plans. So that might be some indication of where they're running over.
All right.
Good evening.
Floor is yours.
For the record, Michael Seacamp Environmental Consulting, and I'm here tonight representing Donald and Robin Johnson at 156 Boston Road. And this is basically the removal of an existing septic system to be replaced with a Presby system and a, I believe it's called a microbionics fast system, sort of a belt and suspenders approach. It's a pretty tight lot. It's pretty close to the wetland. However, it looks like the leach field will be a little bit farther from the wetland than it currently is. But there's a well in front of the house. There's no opportunity to move the septic system further away from the wetlands. And that's pretty much it. There's plenty of access on either side of the house. The new septic system will have a retaining wall around it. So it'll be sort of a patio rather than a hump, and see, with a raised system.
All right. Sam, you getting the plans up?
Yeah, I can't turn them though, so I can, I believe I should have.
I can point things out if you'd like.
Yeah, by all means.
So, existing house right here, driveway in right here. There's a slight retaining wall here, that will be removed. The tank and the fast system will be here, then the Presby leach field in back. The wetland is downslope, it's about 4 foot lower than the lawn, which is here. The entire area that will be affected is currently lawn over top of the septic system. And there is a post and rail fence pretty much at the crest of the slope. That will remain, and the erosion control will go between the proposed retaining wall and the post and rail fence on the lawn. And it looks like there might be an incursion over the property line over here, and that deck is going to be removed. I believe there's a purchase and sale on the property, and the owners obviously would like to get this resolved.
What's the status with Board of Health?
I beg your pardon?
Board of Health, have you filed?
It's on Thursday, the meeting with the Board of Health.
Hasn't been approved yet, okay.
Right.
And Mike, can you tell me what the proximity of the system is to the wetland edge? What's the closest point of the retaining wall to the wetland?
The edge of the Presby system to the wetland line in the closest area is 20 feet.
20 feet.
Yeah. And it's 68 feet from the well.
Yeah, anything else you want to keep going?
No, I mean, just to clarify, our for the other members, you know, that the Conservation Commission's authority for septic repairs extends only to the location and the potential construction impacts. The Board of Health deals with all the design questions. So, presuming that it meets Title V or the Board of Health approves it, we don't have much to say about that. So, it doesn't look like there's any alternative locations to the system, and generally upgrades to the septic system result in improvements to the resource. So,
Good summary. So, yeah, let's keep going down this side.
So it looked to me like this is going to be a bit of a challenge to construct. Maybe you make it sound like it's not a big deal, but the retaining walls, those are all new, are they?
The retaining wall between the septic system, the new septic system and the wetland will be new. There is a retaining wall at the end of the driveway which will be removed. That would provide access, but there's also access on the east side of the house. So there's access to that area from either side without an incursion into the wetlands or onto neighboring properties.
I mean, it won't be difficult to do the correct grading here on the, I guess it would be the west side.
Well, that's the reason for the retaining wall.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would be concerned is just construction impacts, I guess.
Right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't see. Yeah, getting that, looks like that retaining wall on the west side is within a foot of the property line. So
On the west side?
Yeah, the construction of that seems like it.
Yeah, it goes pretty close. Yeah, it's
Exceptionally
the
tricky.
retaining wall is within a foot about.
And there,
That's a tight job.
when you sort of trying to, there is some downward flow from that area going down onto the adjoining property towards the wetland. So I guess I'm wondering how you're doing erosion control around everything. If you're going to stick to your stick within the property line, how do you build that wall and have erosion control around the work site?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think given that there's also a shed on the neighboring property, I suspect that there's permission to work over there. And that would be obviously where the erosion control. It's much farther away from the wetland on the west side, however. Probably more like 50 feet. And it's less of a slope than it is behind the house.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think your point is good, Ben, but maybe rather than sort of going down that road.
If we don't have jurisdiction, I'm fine not going down that road.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we don't have jurisdiction over that kind of thing.
Okay.
But
Is the abutter here?
that's a good point. Anybody here to speak to this one? Specifically the neighbor? Going once, going twice, guess not. Well, I mean, yeah, technically it's just a tight job.
Yeah, it's tight a lot.
But anybody want to make a motion on this one?
I just want to, is the erosion control clearly shown?
No, I put it in the project narrative, and I would suggest that you just make a condition that it be located between the proposed retaining wall and the post and rail fence in the lawn area.
I mean, there's no room in the drawing to put the line in there.
I mean, how close can this retaining wall be constructed to erosion control?
I would say, since you're working on the side, the south side, it could go within a couple of feet. So we have about 5 or at the minimum, we have maybe 2 feet, but that should be adequate. We're proposing the core logs, sort of, they're like core logs, it's more like straw wattles.
Yep.
Yeah.
When the excavation takes place, and when they're backfilling it with Title V compliant sand, that's going to be basically a basin. So if you get a strong downpour like we've had recently, that's where the water will go. It's not going to run off the site. However, in case there's a little bit of sand on the edge of the lawn, that's the reason for the erosion control. And as I said, you should just make it a condition that we send you a photograph, or perhaps your agent can come out and just check it before construction begins.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know, do you have a preference, Dan? I mean, it's a tight thing, and no matter how we like address the point, it's just a tight job.
Yeah, I mean, I think that as long as we have a pre-construction meeting to inspect the erosion control, because that'll be your limit of work.
Yeah, I would say that's reasonable.
And that may be a standard conditions, I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
Can I modify that to just suggest that the erosion control barrier consists of something that's at least 12 inches in height, so the core, a 12-inch core log, or a 12-inch wattle, or a siltation fence or hay bale that's at least, that provides some vertical protection, and that also that the work not start until Board of Health is given approval.
That sounds like a motion.
Actually,
addition to
my
the
graphic does say 12-inch.
Good.
Oh, beautiful.
And then
Filtrex silt top.
including the pre-construction meeting after erosion control barrier has been installed for review.
Yeah.
So those 3 conditions.
Yeah, and I think pre-construction's a standard one these days, but I'm not sure.
I believe it is standard, but
Yeah.
I think we also usually add it in at the end. Actually, I think it's more of an unspoken thing, but so we usually do add it at the end to make sure that it's in writing,
Nobody forget.
that people have to do it.
All right, cool. So was that a motion?
Yes.
Beautiful. Who's
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Hands in the air. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Cool.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, moving right along, we have Sean Kevlahan with Kevlahan Maritime at 53 Northern Boulevard, DEP file 050-1363, an NOI for the demolition of the existing single-family residential structure and the construction of a new single-family residential structure on piles and associated site improvement. Okay.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, my name is Philip Schrecker. I'm an attorney with Fenrick & Nicholson. I'm here standing in for attorney Doug Duchesne. I'm also here with Mr. Kevlahan of Kevlahan Maritime and TJ Melvin, who is our engineer for this project. We're here to discuss the proposed improvements to the property at 53 Northern Boulevard on Plum Island. We propose to demolish the existing single-family home and rebuild it elevated on pilings to remove it from the flood zone. Your role here is to review our notice of intent and the information we've provided, and under section 95-7D of the Newbury Wetlands Bylaw, whether or not we are able to demonstrate that the project as proposed will not have a cumulatively detrimental impact on the protected resources. The areas that might be impacted by this are the barrier beach, coastal dunes, and storm flowage area. As our engineer will explain further, not only will we not be detrimental to the preservation of resources in the area, because we meet all the beach performance and dune standards, but that when completed, we're going to have a cumulative benefit to the area. For example, we're proposing to, during construction, remove 932 square feet of vegetation. However, once the home is raised on pilings, we will replicate that vegetation with 1,495 square feet of native plantings. This is a roughly 62% increase in vegetative cover. Further, by raising the home on pilings, the entire property is now open to permit floodwaters to flow into and around and under the property. And the current traditional foundation, big hole in the ground, impermeable walls, is going to be replaced and filled in with beach quality sand. So all of Plum Island will benefit from this, being able to absorb more floodwaters when those floods come. Also, the plantings that we're proposing are all native species, including things like Pennsylvania sedge. It's a plant that forms really thick mats of grass that will work with the natural buildup of the nearby dunes and help preserve them, as well as tie down the floodwaters. On that note, I'd like to open up for questions, and also for our engineer, TJ Melvin, so he can address any technical questions you may have regarding the project.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
TJ, you got anything on your mind you want to start with?
I believe that.
Thank you.
I believe kind of had addressed all the points that I was going to make. We are proposing gravel for the parking surface for underneath the building in front. And we do have the proposed planting along the left side and rear. again, I can try to answer any other specific questions the commission may have.
Okay. Ben or Mary, which one do you want to start off from the wings, or do we want to start from the middle and give somebody else a turn?
He's pointing at me. Can you just describe what the existing conditions are on the site? I missed that part.
So there's an existing single-family dwelling kind of in the center of the site.
Yep.
And there's some, again, scrubby brush that kind of encompasses the rear of the house.
Yep.
There is gravel along both the left and right side of the dwelling that currently serves the parking.
Yep.
I believe everything outside of that brush is currently vegetated along.
So it looks like you're reducing somewhat the extent of gravel coverage, is that right?
On the left-hand side, I believe we're cutting it back a little closer towards the road.
Yeah.
And on the right-hand side, we plan to continue using the existing gravel parking.
Right. Thank you. And do you have a, yeah, there it is, okay, a profile of the elevation of the building, okay. Thanks.
This is where the previous hearing, I mentioned the propane tank. Can you just sort of speak to that a little bit? Is it in a V zone, is that a reasonable approach?
I believe we are proposing subsurface, correct?
Yep.
Yep, very.
Yeah, it's proposed bottom steel subsurface. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I believe it's in the notice of intent that it's intended to be both weighted and armored, so that it doesn't, or hardened against floodwaters, so we don't have an issue where you have a propane tank flying out of the ground and wrecking someone's house.
What is it, 500-gallon tank, or it looks like a big tank, right?
It doesn't say on the plan.
I'm not sure. Does it have one end of the side on the side of it? Yeah, I'm not good for sure.
We typically require them to be on some sort of pad and tied down.
They are saying it's tied down.
But the plan note says that there's gonna be adequate tie downs or ballast.
Buried.
Yeah, but they're gonna do that and then bury it, so they're gonna strap it down, I guess, underground. So if there's a concrete pad underneath, or steel plate they're putting in.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
don't think
know.
that's gonna be permitted.
Sure.
This has an issue with file number? Were
Yeah, I
there
think
comments on this?
This is 1363. I don't believe there were, I don't remember seeing any comments on it from DEP.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's been pointed out there,
Number
those
come from?
behind on the comments.
Yeah.
1363.
Yep.
I'm gonna beat Mary to this for once.
Well, I'm not sure about that, she's already there.
No, I'm there, I got it. No comments yet.
So there's no, below the structural members of the floor, you're showing no covering on the lower section where the parking is?
No, there is an enclosed entryway that does extend a little bit lower within the building, but will be more than 2 feet above grade.
TJ, the generator is going to be 18 inches?
The what, sorry?
The generator platform is 18 inches, but the house is 25? Is that right?
it shows.
18 feet elevation.
Is it 18, it's 18-foot elevation, the house is gonna be at 25? 25 and a half?
Yes.
25.5, yeah.
Flood elevation 16. Mary, are you familiar with the sedge? I don't think
I was just looking that up.
It
never
doesn't feel right.
So the Pennsylvania sedge is on CZM's coastal native plant list. The sequoia I wasn't finding, so I think in any order of conditions, we should just say that any plantings should be those listed on the Massachusetts coastal native plant list. I don't think I'm not finding the shrubby cinquefoil on that list.
Yeah, the shrubby cinquefoil I looked up, it looks like it's a sandy plant from the Great Lakes.
Yeah.
So, it's rare in Illinois because of beach habitat, so. But the sedge, I mean, that seems a little too far inland to be right for a dune.
It's listed on coastal banks, anyway.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's listed. It's not, I don't know how it will do in sort of this environment, but
Yeah.
it will have to be at least 75% total cover in order to get a certificate of compliance. So if it doesn't take, they'll have to see it. I'm not sure, maybe these are planted with plugs.
I've spoken with Mr. Callahan. We are, if the board's uncomfortable with Pennsylvania sedge or the cinquefoil, we're happy to plant whatever native species you prefer. As a condition, that's not a do or die issue for us.
No, usually it isn't. And so usually we just provide the list of acceptable plants.
Of course.
Yeah.
And that, we do have a list on the website, the Conservation Commission webpage on the town website, and I can also email it to you as well.
Of course.
But this overall, it seems like the type of project that the bylaw is intended to encourage. So you're doing all the right things and getting rid of a full foundation structure and elevating it and revegetating the site is what we're looking for, so that's good.
It is on the CZM side.
It is on there?
Cinquefoil is, yeah.
Okay.
But it doesn't sound like it might be great there. You could plant it out. I think you'll maybe be more successful with other species on the list.
We planted just weird natives, that's it.
Yeah.
It's very pretty.
It's very pretty, yes.
All right. Anybody from the public here for this one? Going once, going twice. Okay. All right. I mean, generally speaking, I think Mary said it well. So, anybody else at the table? Anything to follow up?
We have to worry about construction, staging.
Yeah, but that's sort of normal condition stuff too.
Okay.
Pre-construction, where's the dumpster gonna go on the plans? And how you gonna get it out?
No, we don't. I had to guess, sorry. But we do have the existing gravel parking on either side, likely kind of closer to the road, not really tracking through the site. So my guess would be on either the left hand or the right hand side of the existing dwelling.
Yeah, because I'm presuming that some kind of special condition about, not impacting anything during the deconstruction, building up a limit of work especially, that might be different than the limit of work for construction, more or less.
And then the demolition of the foundation, will all the concrete be removed from the site? That's the goal, right? You're gonna eliminate the foundation, take it out entirely.
Yep.
And then it will be backfilled with compatible sand?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yeah. So is the backfilling going to happen before or after you put the posts in?
After.
Right, presumably.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, that makes sense. So, Sam, if you could just, the conditions to reflect that bit
Yep.
about demolitions.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve.
Anybody?
Second.
Okay.
With the conditions we discussed.
Okay,
Can we just go through those again?
sure.
I mean, I think as long as you mention the foundation must be removed in entirety and clean compatible sand, I don't see that detail on the plan.
Right.
And what are we gonna do with the planting? We're just
You
gonna.
just list, plantings only allowed that are on the list provided, so
Yep.
those aren't on the list.
They're both
then
on
we'll- Yeah.
Do we resolve the tank issue?
And the tank to be,
The tank's a building inspector or gas
Yeah.
inspector or.
Okay.
And it does denote that they are gonna tank them.
So yeah, as long as they don't, go traipsing all over the place while they tear it down, seems okay.
We try to avoid traipsing at all times.
Generally.
Generally, it's unavoidable event.
Yeah. All right.
We have the
Need a vote?
conditions in place.
Yeah. And then the general conditions will be a pre-construction meeting, because there always is. And, like to Mary's point, the plantings will be taken care of. If not by, nature, then we got our 75%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So all in favor? Hands in the air?
Aye.
Okay.
thank you.
Next up, we have Cricket Lane LLC, 55 Pearson Drive, DEP file number 050-1355.
Me again.
Oh, all right.
All right, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Once again, my name is Philip Treffler, attorney with Henry Nicholson, filling in for Attorney DeShane tonight. With me this evening is Walter Erickson, the developer of Cricket Lane LLC, and Benjamin Osgood, a Ranger Engineering Group Incorporated. I believe this is our fourth appearance before the commission, summarizing the last time we were here. I believe that was August 3rd. It's my understanding the commission was going to be reviewing Ms. Martin's peer review and letting us know in what respects the commission may have additional questions or where that review may require supplementation to answer any questions or concerns. However, in reviewing Ms. Martin's work, I believe that it's clear that the project as proposed meets or exceeds the requirements of the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Regulations by replicating wetlands filling, both proposed and historic, as well as mitigating environmental impacts in accordance with the research that Ms. Martin performed, and as required by the comprehensive permit for this 40B project. As we previously made presentations to the Commission, I'd like to open the floor to questions by the Chair. Mr. Osgood, or myself, or Mr. Erickson would be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Ed, why don't you start? Mary's been starting a lot of these.
Yeah, she also repeated.
I know, right? Isn't that helpful?
Okay, so I have a ton of questions, well, I have a ton of thoughts and a few questions specific to Ms. Martin's memorandum, most recent memorandum.
Can I just make one comment? So we had invited Ann Martin to join us in the meeting tonight. Unfortunately, she was unable to join us. So I do have all of the questions that you guys had sent me with regards to that. And if it's all right with the commission, I can compile those into one document and send them to her in an email. Obviously, if there's anything that you want to address them with, that's
Yeah, I have
entirely
questions
different.
that, I think I have more questions that were in Ann's memo and I don't see them addressed. So I just want to make sure they
Okay.
were addressed or understand why they were not addressed. Because I just saw several things in there that I had already I had kind of flagged in my head, and then obviously Ann, because she's very good at what she does, also. The first of those would be item 3 on page 4 of the PDF that you all submitted in June on basin P32. And she notes that it extends very close varies from 3 to 8 feet to the BBW between flags C7 to C9, blah, 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 C11 to C13, C18 to C22. She recommends increasing the setback between this basin and BBW. Does not seem feasible to construct this basin that close to the BBW without impairing or otherwise destroying portions of the BBW, and points to 310 CMR 10.531 of being a fairly strong reason about why that should be done. And in looking at the plans, it seems like still right tight to the BBW.
We are in several locations pretty close to the BBW. We talked about constructability and, essentially to construct a berm right along the edge of the wetlands, you put the erosion control in and then you construct your berm. We can definitely do that without disturbing any wetlands. We did try to pull it back a little bit on the plans from what we had originally proposed. And then in addition, we proposed buffer zone plantings. Part of what we did as well was to identify the trees that were going to remain along that buffer zone area. There are quite a few trees. I think I did try to point out some on the site visit, the trees that would stay in those areas to help protect that wetland area. And then we'll be supplementing with plantings all along that berm, which is shown in the plans.
I think that I was initially looking at the plan set that you have up now, but I think the next plan set's even better, where it really shows the basins.
Right, and I apologize, I didn't know what we were going to talk about, and I just didn't bring that basin isn't on one of these plans here. There's 30 sheets, I tried to pick a couple that were.
I hear you. I understand. Yeah.
I didn't want to bring 15 boards with 2 sides.
Yeah, I totally understand. I totally understand everything you just said, but I think what Ms. Martin's comment is that you should not have any work within the buffer. You should be increasing and leaving an intact buffer zone to that BBW, which is not what I see happening on this plan set. And I do agree with Ms. Martin on that there should be, some amount of buffer, like a healthy amount of buffer left to that BBW, or else you're impairing the resource. And I think she points to, and I think that's the point she made, and I think I brought up that point at one of our early meetings. So I do concur with her that I don't really see in this plan set necessarily how the concern was addressed, unless I'm missing something. Then basin P12 is kind of the same thing, where she recommended, basically said see above comment 3, because P12 has the same situation going on, and I didn't see a lot of changes, it seemed like, from her comments to this plan set. It did the comment after that.
So P1 is, this is P1, I believe, right?
Yeah, that's P12.
So you can see the plantings we proposed all along the sides here.
Yeah, but that's not, so her comments are move them away and preserve buffer, and that's not what's happening. You still have the basin right there, and you're working in straight up to the buffer. So you're removing the buffer.
Well, so I think what you're looking at a comment, but it was resolved through the process,
The comment is the limit of work line for basin P12 extends very close.
Yeah.
As the limit of work line still extends very close. She recommends increasing the setback between this basin and the BBW.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that's, I think that you're planting shrubs afterwards, but you're not doing what she's recommended.
If I may.
Sure. She recommended approval of the plan, and that's what I'm saying.
Well, she recommended approval of the plan.
What I'm saying is you're reading a memo that had been probably superseded by a second memo, and working it out through the process. I mean, there's a lot of back and forth, and that's all.
If I may also, the 100-foot buffer zone is not a hard and fast, thou shalt not build upon this land ever. It's more triggering your jurisdiction of review, and sometimes more intensive. However, again, the standard of review that you're bound to is the project cumulatively more detrimental, or is the project cumulatively detrimental to the resource, rather than is one particular part, as in, for example, we do have some necessary filling, naturally detrimental. However, we are replicating all that by 1.5 to 1. The question is not necessarily is one particular part of this necessarily a detrimental hit, but is the whole project viewed at 1,000 feet is that detrimental?
I completely agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, so just from a technical standpoint,
I get you.
you may not want to make that argument to a Concom, because the whole project is a giant detriment.
Yeah,
And so while it may be legal. Well, I was just speaking ecologically, I'm not getting into all that, but.
Well, we are all held to the standards of the law.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
If I could, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman. One of the things that Ann Martin was concerned about was the canopy and the herbaceous layer along that area where you're talking about providing a buffer zone. So what we did was we actually went out there and identified trees that we could save so that we would preserve the canopy in that area. We also specified some areas, working with her comments, to provide double layer of silk fence in some of those areas. So the mitigation measures that we did by locating the existing mature trees that were out there and the increased plantings mitigated the effect of not having a 20-foot buffer zone.
Okay, thank you.
I have more.
Do you want to like theme them? Are they all kind of in this vein?
I'm doing the Ann Martin stuff first, and then I'm going to get to.
Well, I know, but Ann had lots of comments to this effect.
No, this one's a little different.
All right.
So on the plans that you did bring with the recreation, Ben, the recreational diagram on the lower right-hand side, you also, I think that's where you have the table on the upper left showing the amount of impacts. Was there a change, because Ann Martin's number for calculation came out to like 2,535, but yours comes out to lower than that. There's 970 square feet of historic fill she said should be added in, and I can't make the math work with what she said should be there and what you have on there. So I don't know how that was resolved. I don't know if that was one of these things that was resolved between you. Because that would also put you over the 5,000 square feet of impacts. So that's an important number.
So I don't recall what this is what was agreed to through the process. 1,730 square feet of wetland fill. There's historic fill of 2,039. There's some temporary 855, so the total altered was 4624. There were back and forth on the amount of historic fill, what was considered filled and what wasn't considered filled. So, and I don't know the time frame. We've been working on this for quite a long time. I don't know where things were solidified, but these are the final numbers that we were agreed to.
I believe on the comprehensive permit, paragraph 12, the ZBA found that the project will impact 4,624 square feet.
Yeah, that's the number that's on this plan. I'm just curious why Ann Martin's review said there should be 2,535 feet of historic, and this plan shows something different. I guess that's why I'm asking that. Because that seems to be a discrepancy from the peer review. It wasn't incorporated into the plan. You can understand why I'm asking.
As I said, there was discussion on where the historic fill was. For example, here's historic fill that's off of our property. It's shown there, and I think there was.
We weren't invited to these, and all I have is this and that, so I'm just asking a question.
If I may, I can read the portion. It is applying wetland standard, but the 1.28 acre parcel at 55 Pearson Drive collectively contains 2,039 square feet of historic wetland fill that the applicant voluntarily agreed to mitigate as part of the Village at Cricket Lane project. The board also finds that the Village at Cricket Lane project proposes to permanently fill 1,730 square feet of BVW and temporarily disrupt 855 square feet. In total, the project will impact 4,624 square feet. That's taken directly from the comprehensive permit, ZBA applying the standards.
So, Beth, to your point, where do you think arguably the missing numbers would be? Do you think that the off-site fill, if we accounted that into it?
I don't know. There's nothing there for me to know by. And that's a good question. Ann's not gonna be here. It's a good question to compile for the list for Ann. I didn't know if they would have an answer. I thought maybe it'd be like, oh, we discussed that with Ann and found out that this is where she thought it was and this is where then she decided it wasn't, but we don't have that answer, so let's ask Ann. But right now, I'm just saying, why is there a discrepancy there? And it doesn't,
Right, no, follow, I'm just sort of setting that one up, asking that, and I'll send these guys to say, give or take, on the off-site fill, do you know roughly what the square footage of that is? Just to see if, that math, if that's part of the discussion where this number came from and sort of.
I don't have the numbers in front of us, but I believe the numbers that are listed in the decision from the Board of Appeals are accurate because we went through them with Ann Martin, the Board of Appeals, and our engineers.
And also to address one of your earlier questions about the grading close to the bordering vegetative wetland, I believe you're raising. Same area where we're proposing the trees and such. The board finds that proposed tree and shrub planting should adequately mitigate any potential direct wetlands impacts due to buffer zone work in close proximity.
I do not really care that much what the ZBA says about the Wetlands Protection Act, but thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, so then going from there.
So, wait, your question about numbers, did you pass that to Sam?
Hopefully Sam, I can pass that, Sam did not catch it.
Did he email you his?
No, I did not email that part,
okay.
I found it later.
So then so the big question for now is just finding out where the math is in this letter about replication, square footage, and historical fill versus the final plan set, and how the one number became the other number, more or less. Because, there's back and forth the discussions, the property line, understanding may have moved. The final math gets figured out, but just to clarify that detail would be good. So, Benjamin, you got any more?
I do.
Can you just maybe give us all of them?
Yeah, totally. I'm still struggling about the technical aspects, the purely technical aspects about why there can't be wetlands replication without crossing that wetland.
All right, that we're going to punt to Ann.
Okay.
Because that was basically her move, it sounds like.
But we can answer that for you because, and if we could, we originally proposed a wetlands replication behind the house here, where the historic fill is. And Ann Martin felt that this would be an area that would likely be disturbed again by the homeowner with grass clippings and whatever, and it was much more likely to be disturbed, and suggested that this area would be preserved and less likely to ever be impacted.
Yep.
So we redesigned the whole project so that we can incorporate that wetlands up here instead.
Right.
That wetlands replication.
Right, which I think that makes it a better question for Ann, because it is an unusual thing, and Ann's been doing this a long time, and so for her to suggest something very unusual, I think then this is a better question for her than these guys.
Yeah, I think so. And the certified vernal pool is a vernal pool within a BBW, correct? So it has a 100-foot habitat buffer. It has habitat protections for the
within the resource area.
Within the resource area. Did we go through this last time?
I'm not sure. We've gone back and forth in the vernal pool so many different ways.
Yeah, okay. I would prefer to see no work with a 100-foot buffer of the certified vernal pool. I just think that the habitat, the existing habitat protections for the vernal pool, for vernal pools are inadequate given everything that's been learned since the writing of the act about the organisms that are obligate vernal pool users.
Right.
And so I think that respecting the 100-foot buffer is important.
So let me interject here.
Yep.
Sam, this might be a good time to bring up the conversation you and I had earlier. You want to take it?
So the only thing that I really have is that I reached out to Jacob Kubel, I think is how you say his last name, with regards to why the isolated land subject to flooding that is shown on the plans was not, why they wouldn't certify it as a vernal pool. So the exact question that I asked him was that we were looking for an explanation of why Natural Heritage would not certify the area as a vernal pool even though egg masses were located in the area.
To be clear, that's not what I'm talking about.
No, but let's do this anyway because it's relevant.
So that was the exact question. And I told them that I understood that abutters for the project had put in applications to have it certified, and that it was, I believe, denied. And I asked for more information with why that happened. His response was that they reviewed a couple of applications to certify the ILSF area as a vernal pool habitat since 2017 and 2018. They requested that the observers, which he listed as 2 different parties, provided additional information about the wetlands hydro period, as there have been conflicting data about whether the ILSF sustains a viable vernal pool environment during the amphibian breeding season. Unfortunately, based on the available data, we have not been able to conclude or presume with confidence that the ILSF has an adequate hydro period, at least not in most years. In administering its vernal pool certification program, the NHESP strives to ensure that pools that become certified do indeed provide a habitat function consistent with the definition and discussions of vernal pool habitat in the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act regulations. In the case of the ILSF at 55 Pearson Drive, they're open to reviewing additional data in consideration of possible certification. At this time, however, there's too much uncertainty about the wetlands hydro period and therefore its habitat function to approve certification. So essentially what they're saying is, my understanding is that they just don't have enough information to say that that particular area is wet enough for long enough on a regular basis over a period of multiple seasons when it's wet for them to certify it. So just because a frog could lay eggs in the parking lot if it rains for long enough and it finds a puddle, but that doesn't necessarily make it a viable habitat. So they don't have enough information for that particular area to approve or deny whether it's a vernal pool.
Right, and then I asked Sam to double check just what they would consider enough information, if they would need, 3 visits in the same season, if they would need 7 visits in the same season, if they would need a different kind of data, quality of data, etc. I presume you didn't hear back on that.
I have not even had a chance to
Fair enough.
to discuss it. It was a little bit of a crazy day. So.
Right. So on Sam's to-do list is to find out just what the standard would be for answering this question. Because to your point of vernal pools, as I understand the WPA, we have the discretion to interpret something as being a vernal pool under the WPA rather than under the non-existent bylaw. Under that circumstance, we have relatively limited space, to talk about the habitat functions and features. While totally agree with it, we don't have many tools in that space, but yes. So there's a few tools, but not very many.
Yep.
And we do have an open conversation going on establishing just what the state standards are going to be, so that hopefully we do not become the arbiters of these particular vernal pools. But that being said, what else you got?
I was interested in the comments from the abutters about the potential discharge to the certified vernal pool from some of the houses in the northern corner there. And I'm not good enough at reading all of the technical engineering stuff to know whether that was actually happening, so I thought I'd ask you and
So that the reason for the wall is to direct storm water away from the vernal pool. The houses have gutters and downspouts, and they go into subsurface infiltration. Those infiltrators are located out, in these areas out in the front yards. They're more than 100 feet from the vernal pool, so we can't have a stormwater structure within 100 feet. This wall, there's a swale that directs water down and around into this pond. Have that blown up. Well,
I believe you.
Come down the swale into that detention pond there, so no water is coming from this area into that vernal pool.
Thank you for the clarification, Ben. I think there's just more answers we need to get from Sam and other people. But I would say, in summary, from the 1,000-foot sky-high view, what I'm seeing in Ann's comments and when I look at the design plans and I've heard y'all's narratives is I think there's a project here. I just think that it is very, I think that it's maximizing the amount of lots that can get put onto this parcel at the expense of the resource and doing more harm to the resource than should be done or it should under the WPA. So I think that there's got to be some looking for places to scale back things and protect the resource. I think overall is where I'm seeing things in summary right now, getting to the 1,000-foot sky high view.
Thank you, Daniel. Ben, or sorry,
Thank you, Ben.
you know, one of you,
I know what
go.
you're saying.
Yeah.
So, I have a lot of the same concerns as Ben, but I might come at it from a little bit different direction. Let me find where I'm at here. Have you ever, this is oftentimes when we have large projects, we see, it provides the calculation of the amount of the 0 to 25-foot buffer or whatever particular buffer we're talking about. In the case of the vernal pool, it might be 100-foot or whatever. What percentage of that buffer zone is undisturbed, left undisturbed? Was that done in this project?
I don't recall, I don't recall if we did that or not.
I mean, it just visually.
I don't think we did.
Visually, it looks like it would be a pretty low number depending on how you're looking at it.
So, Dan, can I add to your point?
Please do.
So we had a project that went in over on Boston Road, was it? The one across the street from the dump?
Yep.
And that project took 100% of the buffer in their case. And there is a section in the WPA that assigns resource values to the buffer area. It's very gray, it's very vague. It's frustrating how vague it is. But we said to that applicant, said, we have a resource value that when you take away 100% of the buffer area, you're infringing upon this resource area, and we can't give you the project because you've taken so much of the buffer. How that ended up resolving itself was they went to the 25-foot line off the wetland and gave us, arguably a quarter of the buffer back, give or take. And I think that's what you're getting to with that comment, yes?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, there is a metric that can be, created to kind of describe how much of the buffer zone is left undisturbed. And that has traditionally is, as Brian said, it's something we've looked at in previous applications of this size. So, yeah, I might get a little lost here on my questions, so bear with me. You referenced the ZBA finding that the buffer zone plannings adequately mitigate disturbance in close proximity, et cetera. I don't see anything in the plan that really shows what those plantings are. I mean, at least on this plan view, maybe you have some narrative about what kind of plantings are going to take place, how extensive they are. I mean, it looks to me by the sea wetland that there's not much of anything planted there. And how is it depicted? How can you possibly come to that conclusion, the ZBA finding, if there's no plantings really shown?
Well, it says right here, we're putting along the sea wetlands, we're putting 15 trees and 45 shrubs in those areas that are close to the wetlands.
Is it possible to add more plantings to create somewhat of an undisturbed,
That's where all the detention.
herbaceously vegetated area adjacent to the resources.
Yeah, there was a detailed planting plan, as well as the replication plan.
Yeah, we haven't seen that, so we
Yeah,
don't know anything about it.
that I thought we submitted with the 93 pages of information, but there was one that was submitted.
Exactly, the 93 pages.
I know, it's a lot of information. So DEP requires for wetland replication, I think they have a standard of, I can't remember, it's 5 plants per 100 square feet or something for the wetland replication. And Martin, in one of her comments, thought it was way too small. And we ended up accommodating her wishes and planted tens of thousands of dollars worth of plants in the wetlands replication area and along the edge of those buffer zones. So the planting plan was done by Norse Environmental Services, wetland scientists, and it was approved by Ann Martin, and we will submit that to you.
If
That
it's,
was
if it's
submitted.
helpful,
It was submitted.
if it's helpful,
It-
the ZBA refers to plan sheet 7, 8, and 20.
I've seen those pages, they don't seem to really have much detail. I mean, I guess there's a note there about number of shrubs and trees, but there's no concept of how wide, how big of an area, how much is that planting area going to be mowed, stuff like that.
It's pretty specific, so we'll submit that to you.
Yeah, and I think maybe too, the thing we can take from this is if Sam can sort of extract the relevant pieces from the 1,000 pages of material we've got, maybe it'll make it simpler for us all to engage with that aspect of the question. What do you think, Sam? Does that sound all right with you?
Yep.
Cool.
So I located a response for comments from town boards. This goes back to March of 20. Our former conservation agent Doug Packer expressed concern about activity in the buffer zone near the D series BBW. That was on the record with the ZBA. Just our agent didn't feel comfortable with the setbacks up there on the D, and my question for Ann Martin is just what happened to his comment? Were they addressed, or were they discarded, or what went on? And my question, another question for Ann Martin, are there any conditions we might add that would offer further protections to the known habitat that exists around that D-series wetland? And, hopefully she may respond to that. And this wetland replication area, this is all I've seen, this flat view. This further information that you might supply that has like a sectional view of how the grades might work. And
there's a topographical plan that shows cutting so that the area can be excavated to have the same hydrology of the existing wetlands area. And the planting plan calls for muck soil, organic soil that has a minimum of, I think the DEP requirement is 60% organics. And then it specifies the type and species plants and their location, how many are going to be planted. So we'll make sure we get that all to you tomorrow or Thursday.
yeah, I think what I can't quite visualize here is just, it seems like you're up against the stone wall and the bank, and there's going to be some grading, and it's just, I'm wondering, I'm hoping that the conditions are such that it will be successful, and of the area that you think you can produce there.
We think it will. It slopes up gently from that existing wetlands area. It's an upland, and it slopes up a little bit.
We walked it.
And what we're proposing to do is cut that out so that we have a flat area that's at the same elevation as the wetland. And then, as I said, replace it with the muck, organic material, so that we can plant the plants in that. And Ann Martin required, and one of our conditions was that that work be done within, I think, 6 months after the start of the project, and monitored for 2 years.
How is that staged? I mean, seems like at the time you're putting in the main roadway, you ought to be building the replication for that taking.
And that's exactly the way we plan to do it. So the wetlands, the area that we have to cross the wetlands is very narrow, and we'll be putting down mats, travel mats, so that we can get a vehicle over there and load the excess fill onto that, take it out, bring the new material in with the plants, and create it all at once. It'll be done in a week's time, week and a half time.
What happens if you have to go back in there to augment the plantings or the invasive species issues need to be addressed? Can you get back in there after the map is removed?
We'll do all the rest of that by hand. So once we take out the material with a mini excavator, all the rest of the stuff can be done by hand in field crews. I've done wetland replications in the past, naturally for projects, and I know we can handle that. They also required that it be monitored by a wetland scientist on site while we're doing the work, and Norris Environmental Services will be monitoring it as we do the construction.
Good? All right, other side of the table. Anybody have a preference in going first?
Mr. Chair, I have to recuse myself because I was not a member of this commission at the
Yeah.
original time of application.
You get this out of all the fun. Floor is yours.
Well, thank you. I do have some of the same concerns that Ben has already articulated, so I'm not going to kind of stress on those, but I'm kind of concerned about the vernal pool issue. When you were here last time, the commission was led to believe that the vernal pool was not certified, and that was kind of the end of the conversation. And I'm reading this July 21st, July 10th, 2021 memo from Mr. Kubel to North, a little bit differently. What he's saying, and I'll read it, is that it has been determined that there still is a need for additional information about pool function. So that's not saying that it's not there. That's saying they want more information. So my take on that is it's up to you to supply the information for him so that he can say, yes it is, or absolutely it isn't. And that's not what I'm hearing what's going on. And it's concerning because if there's a vernal pool there, and you're kind of saying that it isn't because it's not certified and he's actually asking for more information. I think that's an important point. Now we can dance around words, and I've read this a bunch of different times, okay? But what I'm saying is, my interpretation is, he is asking for additional information. So it's incumbent upon this process that that information be supplied to him so that he can make the determination. And if that information is now, if that information is next year, whenever it is, that information needs to be supplied to him.
It is our position that we have submitted that information to them 3 times. National Heritage has looked at this 3 times, and they have been on site on a number of occasions, and the information was not enough positive information to certify that as a vernal pool. And those 3 applications have been made. I don't think that National Heritage will ever tell you that this area would never become a vernal pool. But from our position, we've done it 3 times and we've met the standard of the act. And we, with all due respect, we're not gonna wait another year to
So
do information.
this memo was July of this year. It's
Yes.
not July of last year. And
No,
he's-
but we have 2 others,
Please.
because they were out there in 2015 and
This
2017.
memo is from July of this year where he is asking for additional information. That's what this memo says.
Well, I think the challenge here is the challenge of proving a negative.
So
I mean,
that's
he's saying
what
he
we-
does not yet possess enough information, but that does not necessarily mean enough information actually exists.
If he were to say that it does not look like there is enough information to certify this, but that's not what he's saying. He's saying he's asking for additional information. There is still a need for additional information. Those are the words. It's all about words, right? It's all about how the thing is phrased. And he is saying there is still a need. Now,
What he's saying, he needs, specifically, he needs information about the hydro period. And that pond has been documented as being dry in June in multiple years. And
that's not what he's saying
And
in
the only way
July.
he's gonna certify it is to show that it doesn't dry up. And if it dries up every year, you're never gonna have that information.
In July of 2021,
Yeah.
that's not what he's saying.
Well,
It's not.
he isn't saying that there is water there and I'm curious either. I think this is a question with an answer. The phone call could probably clear it up. Well, there's some ambiguity to what he's saying. I think a phone call saying, hey, what did you mean by this email?
Let me rephrase what you're saying,
Go
if you
ahead.
don't mind. As I understand the WPA, the burden of proof is on the applicant, and this body is not convinced that the applicant has met the burden of proof. They have a good argument, it's fine. They have some exchanges, by all means. But we, just at this point, there's enough open questions that the burden of proof is on you to prove the negative. It's not on us to disprove the positive, it's on you to prove the negative. And so far, the proof, it can, by all means, you guys prove it to yourself, right? But, there's enough questions that it sounds like you're not proving it to us. And it's not our job to disprove it, it's your job to prove it. Fair enough?
I think so, and again, it's how he chose his words in this memo. That's the concern, and that it is the job of the applicant to satisfy the board.
Well, again, from our perspective, it's been done 3 times. If we do it 10 times over 10 years, maybe one of those years it will show up, I don't know. But we've done it 3 times and we've met the standard of the Wetlands Protection Act.
Right, and this is why, rather than getting into the back and forth about whose data and whatnot, we're trying to get the state to chime in to give us a better understanding of the situation at hand, because, we're not saying that you're not right, but we're just saying at the moment, our burden of proof hasn't been met. We're not currently convinced because, last year was weird, this year was weird. I mean, 2 weird years doesn't make, or maybe it does nowadays.
There's 2 droughty years.
Yeah.
There's 2.
Well,
I mean,
started drought.
July was not droughty, but up to July
Yeah.
it was droughty. Can I make one more point about this?
I mean, you guys good?
That's all, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, just specific to Pete's point, it would, if the applicant is willing in the future, it certainly would be helpful if you're gonna have Mr. Kubel or another representative from Natural Heritage out to the site to, I mean, maybe we were notified and nobody notified the
Yeah,
commission.
we've had a weird year too.
Yeah, we've had a weird year too. I don't know if you attempted to notify the commission.
It was there.
What?
He went out.
Doug?
Mr. Kubel went out on site.
I am saying, Mr. Kubel, and did he tell you beforehand you were there? It sounded like from the email that you went out with Mr. Kubel.
I did not.
That somebody from.
I did. He had to get permission from us to go on.
Right, so if the applicant is willing, it certainly would be useful in situations like that if the commission was also invited, so that if we have
Or like, who's
really
the
specific
agent?
questions like
Yeah.
this, we can ask him in person, and then we're not sitting here.
You didn't
Beating
have an
around.
agent at the time.
Yeah.
I know.
We would try, it happened in a day, and there was no agent to call and say, hey, can you come out?
And that's 100% why I'm not saying like you
Right.
just didn't invite us, is I'm like, I don't know what happened here, but if you guys are open to it in the future, it'd be great.
To be honest with you, he provided very little information when we were out there. He would not discuss it. He came out with
There's another.
and another gentleman,
Yeah.
and they wouldn't discuss anything, so.
That makes sense. All right, well then, I think I'll turn out to the public. I presume we've got some commentary. How many hands? Who's here for this one? All right, let's, oh, good lord. I don't know.
Just have.
Let's do it alphabetically, I don't know.
Just have somebody.
Yeah.
Brian,
Somebody
do
come
you
up.
mind if I start with vernal pool stuff, so then?
Yeah, sure. Come on up, introduce yourself. You can get started, and then, I don't know, you can pick the next one.
Dan Linden, I'm a resident of Pearson Drive. So I've had some back and forth with Jacob Kubel. I hate saying this as if, it matters, but I have a PhD in wildlife biology, so I have some expertise in the subject, right? I don't work for the state. I don't work in wetland certification, but I did spend time studying vernal pools as a college student at the University of Rhode Island. What I can say to Sam's point about whether a pond that frogs may visit and then die and dry up in can serve as a vernal pool or not, that is the question that Jacob has posed.
in regards to this particular vernal pool. And the problem is that Natural Heritage doesn't have this defined anywhere. And there's nothing in the WPA or anything written by DEP that addresses how often does a vernal pool have to provide metamorphs that successfully go on to become adults. I mean, you could have a pool that's successful and then everybody goes on the road and gets hit by cars, right? So, you know, it's a huge gray area, right? The issue is that the guidelines that are presented to the public from Natural Heritage include 2 months of inundation in the spring. So as soon as there's a thaw, there needs to be 2 months of water for it to be at least as much water to qualify as a vernal pool. This pool meets that standard and has met it every year someone has tried to check it. 2, there can't be an inlet or an outlet, because that would mean that it might be a permanent water body, which would not make it a vernal pool. That's not a problem here. And then the presence of obligate species. So they even have facultative or facultative species, like peepers, are on their guidelines for, you know, folks can try to find out if there's peepers at a pool. We're not talking about peepers. Wood frogs have been found there, and spotted salamanders, including larvae, have been found in that pool. And in fact, with regards to wood frogs, every time someone has checked that pool, there have been egg masses. So when Mary went out there in 17, there were egg masses. In 18, there were egg. Maybe she didn't find egg masses in 17. I don't think she went out early enough for that. She went out and found tadpoles. She has a record of 200 tadpoles. No, hundreds of tadpoles was the record, right? But she only submitted a photo of one. That's their, you know, we're not sure about the evidence. She then went back in July and found metamorphs. Submitted a photo of a wood frog metamorph, which means successful reproduction. That was in 2017. For some reason, Natural Heritage has been hesitant to take that as evidence. So then she went back in 18, found egg masses. Then never visited again, according to the record. Unless someone went out there, I think there were other visits that happened at the end of June throughout July in successive years. The problem is wood frogs only need the first couple of weeks of June to be able to successfully metamorph, right? So you could be out there on June 14th and the pond dried 4 or 5 days before and all the tadpoles made it out and they're in the woods. But now you're there on June 14th and you've got a dry pool. That's still a vernal pool, right? So, I mean, there's a lot more that I could say about this, but you know, the timing of it, when we should be having these discussions, I feel like I could probably write more of this down and just submit to the Concom for reference, whatever. But I agree with the notion that we're not going to be able to prove that this is not a vernal pool. That's just not going to happen because there's too much evidence that it is a vernal pool. And in order to prove that it's not, would require a long-term study. And critically, it would require Natural Heritage to tell us what on earth they need to say it's not a vernal pool. And I know that they're not going to do that. They've already stated they are specifically wanting to be separate from these regulatory situations, right? Because they're looking at the ecology, they're looking at the species biology. They're not involved in this kind of stuff. And so maybe it's something that has to go to DEP. Maybe it has to involve lawyers interpreting the WPA. What is vernal pool habitat? Can you have a vernal pool that's good once every 20 years? This is something I posed to Natural Heritage. What do we do in the light of climate change? How many certified vernal pools are now non-functional because climate change has removed water availability such that most of them dry every year? That goes back to landscape resilience and the importance of keeping pools like this that are short hydro period in addition to long hydro period pools. So this is all, you know, in the weeds, obviously, so I apologize for that, but I'm glad that you guys are finally addressing this because when it got brought up in the zoning board process, the fact that evidence was submitted to Natural Heritage and they decided not to certify was used as de facto evidence that there was no vernal pool there, and that was never the case. Thanks.
Dan, I have a question, maybe question for you. Do you know what triggers wood frog breeding? Is there an onset trigger? Is it
I think it's just the ground thaw.
Just the ground thaw.
So, you know.
So I guess my question is that if you have an early ground thaw or like a really early last frost, could you then have an early onset of wood frog breeding and early metamorphosing and all that? So, you know, when you have.
Absolutely, right. So most years it's the end of March, start of April.
Yes.
You could have a year where it's the middle of March because the ground has thawed, there's now water in the pool. And as soon as the ground thaws and there's a warmish night, right, that's above freezing, the frogs will start migrating and calling to each other, and then they'll start laying eggs. And importantly, the eggs don't need to be, they can't freeze. So if you have a freeze after that, that could be trouble. But they can withstand pretty low temperatures, and so a typical springtime will have those kinds of processes happen. But and that's kind of the point, right? Like with climate change, we're going to have earlier thaws, and then the really what matters is precipitation. And to your point earlier, Brian, we're in a several-year drought, in a decadal drought, the 21st century is a drought, right? So like the aughts were pretty wet. I bet that vernal pool was highly functional. In the 10s, who knows, maybe only 1 or 2 years. I mean, you can look at the precipitation record. I submitted this to Natural Heritage saying, look, 17 was a wet year. That's the year that Mary found a metamorph, right? 19 was a wet year. No one was there. 20 and 21, dry years, right? So I think there's lots of evidence that this is a vernal pool. And so treating it as a vernal pool and modifying the plans as such seems like the most pragmatic way forward, right? Because you're never going to prove a negative here. So let's stop wasting time with that.
All right. So then, Dan, I need you to pick whoever's going to come up next. Come on, spin around again.
Take a volunteer.
Take a volunteer, or like whoever wants to come up.
Who else would like to speak?
But
I'll go.
I gave.
Because no one ever wants to follow Dan. So
Now hold on before we get started, because I know Dan has a PhD, and
Yeah.
so like he's been sort of on point the whole time.
Yeah.
To the extent you can, let's keep it as jurisdictional as we can.
No, absolutely.
Cool.
So Melissa Goldner, 19 Pearson Drive. So I am a resident at Pearson Drive, and I don't have a PhD. I have a BCBA. If that means anything to anybody. But I really just wanted to point out actually what Brian you said earlier, and I wrote it down. Sorry. The whole project is one big detriment ecologically, and I've been arguing that from the very beginning, back from when it was at the ZBA. The environment has always been my piece. I have 2 small kids. I'm very concerned about climate change. I'm very concerned about these once-in-a-lifetime storms we seem to be having every year. And this parcel in particular just has some really valuable, obviously wetlands, creatures. We have a lot of beautiful trees and everything up there, and I just think, again, keep looking at that vernal pool, and I really appreciate that you guys are doing your due diligence here. I think that this is an inappropriate use of this space, and I will just keep putting that forward as often as I need to. So, thank you guys, and I also want to thank you also for hearing our comments, because not all of the town committees are willing to hear our comments, which is why we keep showing up for you guys. So, thanks.
Well, in the spirit of doing that, anybody else want to come up? Yeah, by all means.
Hi, I'm Bart Bracken. I'm an abutter at 69 Pearson. And I just really, Dan said something, I just want to emphasize it, that I think we all recognize that this development is going to happen. We don't think it's appropriate, but we understand that it's going to happen. And I think at this point, we would really say, why don't we make this a proper size for the parcel? When we consulted lawyers, we talked to people about it, they said they couldn't believe how much you squeezed into a very, very small area. And I think at this point, I think clearly the environmental piece of this is something that we're going to be pursuing aggressively, and I would hope that you would take a look at your plan and try to figure out how you can make this a more reasonably sized development within our community. And I just ask that you really take a look at that. Thank you. And thank you for the work you're doing.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Going once, going twice. Okay. So then, just double checking with everybody at the table. Any other last minute business?
I just wanted to add one other question. So, again, I referenced comments from our former agent, Doug Packer. He had a recommendation that the active and the reserve area might be swapped. Is that something that came up to you guys? That would remove the primary septic system further from the area of the vernal pool.
That primary septic area is 101 feet away from the vernal pool, so.
Is the
primary one.
Is the primary area closer to the roadway? There's two.
No, it's not.
It's further from the road.
That's kind of,
I think that was,
I don't know if that ever came up in discussions or.
The problem with using the secondary area, secondary areas never get used. We never use them. It's more obtrusive to build that secondary area than it is to build a primary, and that it has to be raised up higher. Takes more walls. I mean, it just takes more construction to use that secondary area. It works, but the primary area is the better area, so that's why we made that the primary area.
And by keeping that distance greater than 100 feet, we meet all the regulations. You could have a drinking well with 100 feet of that leach field. And the Board of Appeals, again, wanted to make sure that we kept it at 101 feet. And they put a condition in that the distance had to be staked out by a surveyor prior to the installation of the septic system.
All right, just a question. I wonder if it came up, that's all.
I will say that I'm gonna add a question to my list of questions for Ann about that, because that was another one that she pointed out in her memo, that she felt that it would be smart to move those systems further back from the 100-foot Title V buffer. And it doesn't seem, I thought on one plan set it looked like you had done that, but then I went deeper into the plan sets, and as you just said, it's still right up on it. So that'll be another question for Ann.
Okay, so then, going back to you guys, before
One thing I think is important to note, that potential vernal pool, we're not touching it. It remains. So we're all talking like it's gonna be abolished and, filled in. It stays. We're not touching it. So.
You're destroying it. I mean, you are removing the entire buffer.
No.
You're removing the entire buffer around it. So, there's.
Right, so we've got a list for Ann, we're waiting on questions about, we're looking for.
Yeah, one more.
Give me a moment and then we'll turn to you. So we've got the list for Ann of questions. We've got the standing vernal pool disagreement, whatever. We're working on that one. And that's about the summary of the business that we have still to deal with. We've got a plan to hopefully get them both addressed. That sound right to you guys?
They're gonna provide also the
plan.
Right.
Sheets.
Right.
Mitigation plan and.
So,
Yeah, I see landscape plans.
does everybody on the board have a full-size set of prints?
No, but I use computers at home.
With big screens. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't do that.
Yeah, I know.
It's kind of annoying, the moving around.
Well, have me
plan,
bring
but,
down
yeah.
5 full-size copies and,
Sure, if you wanted, that's great. I have to do it for work all the time, so it is nice to get a big paper copy.
Yeah.
I think I also have to say, I'm embarrassed to say that Sam and I both looked online and through our permitting systems, it looks like there's an uploading error on the ANRAD, because there's 4 documents from the ANRAD process in our permitting system, but the 2 plan sets, when you try and download them, it just says that the link is bad, or the server's not working. So if you guys possibly have Ben, do you still have the ORAD?
Okay.
Could you please give us a copy of that, because it might, I'm sure Sam could go into a warehouse somewhere and take it out, the original, but it may just facilitate us being able to review it.
Okay, so then with that, let's turn back out to the far corner.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say anything originally because it was said very well.
Introduce yourself, please.
Stephen Godzik, 7 Pearson Drive.
Thank you.
I have to disagree with downsizing the project. The way I look at it is, after months and months and months, and even with their admission, how many times they had to change the plans, and how many things they have to do. We're going to move this over here, we're going to replicate this over here, we're going to do... Common sense tells me that if you have to do that much
to a project, it doesn't belong there. I mean, this is years. And they admitted themselves, they had 115 boards on 2 sides. Those are changes, those are adjustments. If you have to adjust a plan that much, it's not a plan.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
thank you for the thought, and, you know, we hear you.
True.
All right, so then, we're good, right? So we'll continue this to, what is our dates?
September
21st, right? And hopefully, if Ann can't come, she can move in.
So that was what I was saying before about the questions for her. Those of you who have sent them to me, I am putting them all in one document. If it's okay with all of you, I wanted to make sure that it was before I just went ahead and did it. If it's okay with all of you, I can just send that out to her, all of the questions that you guys had, and get written responses back from her.
Yeah.
And then we can address them at the meeting on the 21st.
And I think it would be good to CC everybody.
Yeah, and unless there's any reason why you think she would need to be here for the meeting on the 21st, we can just go with the written responses and discussion from that through emails as opposed to having her come in.
I mean, my question to her, though, would probably be more conversational, would simply be the wetland replication. I don't know, we'll see how her answer goes, but that'd be my.
That's probably the most conversational.
That'd be conversational. All right, so sounds like a plan?
Thank you very much.
So we need a vote to
you.
continue?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Somebody make a motion to continue?
My motion to continue to 7 PM on September 25th.
Thank you, all in favor? Hands in the air, beautiful. Are you voting? Vote yes.
Yes.
Thank you, okay, good guess.
Are we not signing back?
I have them, I was gonna send them around after to avoid too much shuffling.
Yeah.
But I have them.
Alright, so we'll do those at the end. Okay.
They seem to get a little bit lost in translation, so I would rather just do it all at once.
I'll translate by Sam tomorrow. I'll translate all the stuff I have in the morning.
Alright, so we've still got some people waiting around. Coughlin Shade Builders, 7 Larkin.
We need to get Mary back in here.
Somebody get Mary on your way out, please. Thank you.
She was just standing there.
CEP number 050-1360, continue to ANRAD to determine if areas within a resource area can be classified as isolated land subject to flooding. Mary, hey.
Where are you? That's okay.
So just you, TJ?
Yes.
Okay.
Good evening, my name is TJ Melvin, Millennium Engineering, on behalf of the applicant for the project at 7 Larkin Road. So since the last time we were in front of the commission, some of the members may remember we added some additional flagging on the sidewalk. So flags Z1 through Z7 have been added. Flag D20A has been added and D17 was removed. We'd added the contours for the site as was requested to further analyze the isolated wetland as you come into the site. We've also added the 100-year floodplain elevation. As you can see right on your copies, I do apologize, it followed the wetland line pretty closely, so it may have been a little tough to realize exactly where it was, but it does hug right along the wetland line. I can answer any other questions the commission may have, but those are the changes we made since the last time we were here.
Okay, great. Mary, you've had a break. Why don't you?
Is the buffer zone shown on that plan?
No, I don't have them on.
And is the riverfront area offset shown on the plan?
The riverfront area is not. You do have the bank, but we don't show any of the buffers on, just to kind of make it clear to see. It was hard to read with the contours on themselves.
Okay. Typically, we'd want to have those shown on the plan, but that's my only comment. I think we talked at the previous meeting about the isolated wetland, and all the changes that I had recommended to Mark West, I think have been incorporated into the plan.
I do have the request also, just kind of a blow up of the isolated wetland that we were talking about, a few spot grades.
And what was the flood storage volume?
Honestly, it doesn't, it's about like 3.6 acres that ultimately drain to it. It doesn't really pocket much more than a couple tenths. Yeah, I mean, it's a little flat through here, but it's, you know, like 26.8, 26.3, and then 26, 25, 23, all the way down to the end, so it kind of really just does funnel right.
It doesn't have enough of a basin to store.
It says that it has enough, it's large enough to potentially hold a 1/4 acre foot volume, but based on the elevation of the contours and spot grades provided, the wetland does not have the capacity to hold water to an average depth of 6 inches.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it has the acreage and everything else.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, let's recuse myself for not being present during this afternoon.
And you're here for just the fun, huh?
I'm hoping for some new information.
For the new stuff, eventually.
All right. Pete?
I'm good.
Okay. Danny? You want to keep going, Ben?
I almost wanted to go back out there this week to see what 3.5 inches of
really
rain made it look like. But
okay.
I'm just trying to think for a second. How many elevation spots were taken inside of it?
That I have just shown here, or
Yeah, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Those were just kind of random ones throughout there. There were additional ones that we had from survey. I didn't show a bunch.
I guess what I'm just trying to say is I look at this map and I see like 6 spots and coming to an average elevation, and that would using that would be a little dubious. But you're saying that there's a lot of elevation shots.
Yeah, I didn't want to keep doing the same, elevations kind of in the same general area.
Okay.
Okay. So then presumably you guys, that's the adjusted drawing, you're not drawing the connection between that very thin stream that we were talking about last time?
Correct.
Right. Yep. All right. And then are there any other issues other than that one to cover on this? I mean, arguably this one's, you guys want to vote tonight?
Yeah, if the commission's willing to.
All right. Anybody interested in doing that, or do you want to ask for more information? Does anyone want to go? Pete, do you want to go for a walk? Or?
I'm good.
All right.
I'd just like to have the buffer zones and riverfront area shown on the plan. This is an ANRAD for future development, so it needs to show where those offsets are.
Yeah.
So you're saying basically you feel like the plan set's incomplete at the moment?
You could theoretically prove it contingent on getting, the plan showing the buffer zones and riverfront offset.
Yeah.
Or you can.
Well, that just means that theoretically in a future filing, the wetland line is set, but the buffers and the riverfront
Well, there's
aren't.
different ways of showing. We want to make sure that it's accurately shown on the plan, and I think it's not a difficult thing to do, but it will make the plan busier.
But I think it sounds like they're very important details. I agree with you, they're important details.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give us a chance to prepare an ORAD. Do you have one prepared for this evening? Order of resource area delineation?
I'm not sure. I have forms for it.
Okay.
The signature sheets for it, but that's about all I have right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Question.
How you doing? Hi. I'm Steve Sannerhill, 54R Central, I'm the direct abutter behind it. And I sat through 2 of those Cricket Lane events, so I feel like I should be able to ask something. My understanding of this whole process was that if you were trying to decide if the isolated wetlands stayed separate or not, or if the stream
That was part of it, yep.
Okay. So was that decision made by him not having a guard on there, or?
He's saying that we're not drawing it on here, so if we approve it, then that decision is made that it does not exist. It's an isolated land subject to flooding and is not part of a bordering vegetated wetland.
Right.
And what is the,
We have to vote to accept it or not, and so
Okay.
we don't know what the outcome is yet, we haven't voted.
okay,
On how everybody feels about that question.
okay, but that was my premise correct? That was why.
That was
the
one of the
property
sticking
was 40?
points,
Okay.
yeah.
And then, what was that based on, that he was able to take it off the drawing? Is that,
It's not taken off, it's still showing it as a wetland, just a non-jurisdictional wetland that's not hydrologically connected to the wetland below it. Based on conditions at the time it was flagged by their professional wetland scientists that flagged it, and then based on future site visits, we did a site visit to look at that area.
yeah,
And I don't know if everyone's unanimous in their feelings about that, but we
There's a
have
lot-
enough information at least to be able to make a decision.
because the last meeting you someone suggested a third peer review and all these other things, but
Right.
between those meetings, did anything happen to determine that, or you just? Okay.
Nope.
And the advantage of it being all one, is that it could be yield
It makes a
more lots?
difference in terms of the protection that it receives under the Wetlands Protection Act, the Mass Wetland Protection Act. So if it is isolated
Yeah,
and doesn't meet the volume criteria to be a certain kind of resource, then it doesn't receive protection as a state wetland.
Oh.
If it's connected hydrologically, it receives full protection. So it's an important distinction in this.
so that could yield more buildable lots for them.
Potentially, yep.
All right, so then to Mary's point, you know, personally, like, I feel like it's their call, because we would just argue about the next set of lines at the next project, and that's just the pain then, as opposed to doing it now, so, you know.
I'm not sure what you mean.
Oh, well, just like, you know, because
The third option is we could say we'll approve everything but that, right?
Yeah, we don't have to approve the wetland line or the buffer line, we're just approving the flag line, and at the next meeting, when presumably they're doing a project.
They're requesting, the ANRAD requests approval of the boundaries shown on the plan.
Right, not of the boundaries not shown on the plan.
Right.
So if they want to argue about what the boundaries are, so the riverfront area, right, it's not here, we're not approving the riverfront area line.
They have a riverfront area line on there, they're just not showing the 200-foot offset from it.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were,
No, they have that shown.
The riverfront area.
Yeah.
I just misheard, I wasn't apparently looking.
It's part of, some of it is with bank and some of it is not on bank. That was flagged pretty conservatively, and I didn't have any problems with that.
All right, so that's just on me for tinny ear.
No,
But,
no, we have to make a decision on what the plan shows, the resources that are shown on the plan,
right,
and whether they're,
so the buffers would be nice, but,
yeah, and especially the riverfront area is, it's a resource area. It's not showing the actual boundary of the limits of the riverfront area. So we're only showing the inner boundary of it. So
Yeah.
my recommendation would be to continue in order to have that information shown on the plan and issue an order at the next meeting.
all right,
I'll second that motion.
okay. So then, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Abstain.
Abstain, great, all right. So, we'll do this again on the 21st,
I
7
didn't
PM?
have, TJ, I didn't have a chance to look at that plan before the meeting, so I pointed out to you earlier, but it's,
Yeah, I can get the buffers on, get that in.
okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, next one, I guess we presumed, was there anybody else here for that one? I mean, just to clarify, you were the only one. We kind of, yeah, it's getting thin on the ground, so. Where are we? Steve DeSalvo, 16 and 20 Northern Boulevard, DEP 050-1364. An NOI to nourish the dune and low areas with compatible sand, estimated to fill an area 130 by 50 by 1.5 feet deep. To ensure existing dune grass will grow, plant additional dune grass, and to install sand fencing to encourage dune growth and stability.
That's us. Want me to stand?
I mean, you whatever.
We're both here. This
Yes, I'm Jody Latimer at 20 Northern Boulevard.
Okay. So the floor is yours. What do you got? Any
So,
updates?
well, we submitted the NOI back in April. Two of you showed up for a site visit, Mary and Dan, on May 20th, along with our contractor. We had some posted questions from DEP that we responded to on July 26th. They issued the NOI number on August 9th. Since then, they have not responded to our responses to their questions, which I don't know whether that means no news is good news or they're just backlogged, but in any event, they were fairly straightforward questions about sieve analysis. You've been provided with those answers, and the type of dune grass we intended to plant, and the methodology for doing the nourishment, basically mats to get up over the dune, spread it in the lower areas. I did a drawing with where the sand fencing would go, so I guess,
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, happy to answer any questions. Hopefully we've addressed all open issues.
Okay. Let's see. I don't know. Dan, you want to start? Just we'll mix it up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, so I still have some concerns about the methodology, and I know there was another thing we spoke about with Mary mentioned was, I don't know if you got into the actual thickness or the elevation of new sand you're going to bring in, but there was some thought of doing it in small layers and not piling so much in certain areas that the existing growth would have a tough time reestablishing. I don't know how, I understand what you guys are, how you're trying to access the site. We looked at it. It's just, there's potential for that to go wrong. Maybe that makes, the equipment makes the mats aren't adequate. I don't know how to deal with that. I think maybe some monitoring of the activity when it occurs might be needed, like a trial run, a loaded bobcat running up these mats and see how it works, I don't know that it's a certainty it's not going to cause some problems. That's kind of the two areas that I think further detailing might be. I don't think there's any narrative even really, as far as your application goes, that talks about the, equipment involved, the staging area. I know what you're doing, but I don't know if it's documented thoroughly. So that's all I got.
Well, the type of equipment was mentioned in the narrative, what he was going to use and how he was going to do it. So that was actually in the
response, because the DEP asked the questions, this skid steer, but again, so it did mention that.
Yeah, maybe I read that, but maybe I need to read some more, but I'm interested
in terms of, okay, should we wait for your questions too, or just?
Well, just to build on what Dan was saying, I think that, the area is proposed to be filled as the low swale, but it's already vegetated, and so one issue was not burying plants in the course of, you got to build it up slow enough so that the plants can keep up with it. And then the second was the plan, I don't think, showed what the final contours were going to be. Do we have any grading or anything shown? I think you used a site plan from a previous project and just with some arrows showing this is where we want to do the work. There.
So trying to address the two questions. So, I'm of the understanding that dune grass can handle 1 foot of additional sand. That's what we proposed specifically. 400 cubic yards across the project area of 6,500 square feet.
Okay.
And I did the math, so I believe that's good math. But if I'm wrong, tell me if it's off in some way. In terms of the contours, the existing conditions, clearly it's not flat, right? It's a relatively flat dune surface, which of course has undulations. And so the idea is to add a foot to the undulations, not dump a big pile in one area. It's to nourish that, but not try and make it flat or anything.
Right.
And the reason for the additional sand fencing, because, you know, as we all know, the sand fencing captures sand. We want it to continue to build.
Trying to solidify it as much as
I mean,
as it
at some point, it may be more expeditious just to do sand fencing and not even add sand. Because we may capture more than we're asking permission. We didn't realize this would be so complex, because we came here thinking we were doing something good.
Yes.
And to be commended, and we understand the role you're playing and why you need to do what you're doing, but it's still, from our perspective, a bit frustrating. Because, and he's a new neighbor. I've been on the island 23 years, but we sort of scratch our head and go, why isn't everybody doing this?
I bought the property last May, and that was my first question to him. Do they do this?
You know,
we assumed that people did.
Well, I knew it was less prevalent than he might have thought, but I've been very involved. I'm the treasurer of the Plum Island Foundation. I'm very involved in what happened at Reservation Terrace, the nourishment there that happened a few years ago with sand and dune plantings. Again, not your jurisdiction, but anyway, similar projects, same materials. So, you know, the answer, to the best of my knowledge, is we would plan to put 1 foot of depth as evenly as possible. We want to preserve the existing dune vegetation. We want to add to it. And
as you know, the grass is extremely hardy, so
Yep.
adding a foot of sand,
either
it's going to come through.
Either to replenish anything that might be damaged, as well as any other bare spots. In the photographs, you can see that there's some good vegetation. Most of that came when the Army Corps did the project in 2010. Some of it, probably a lesser extent, was from the UNH project that Professor Greg Moore did. I helped plant that back in 2014 as well. So,
What time of year were you thinking of doing this?
at this point now, well, obviously we're precluded during the summer, not that it would make any sense anyway, but by National Heritage Endangered Species between, as you know from the letter, from April through the end of August. I think at this point, we haven't really discussed it, but probably in the spring, early spring, obviously before we're precluded because of the plovers. And we would, so that's when we would think to do it.
I think they gave us a window of, what was it, August or September to...
Well, we're precluded through the end of August because of plovers, but theoretically...
There's no rush to do this.
Right.
Again, we're not looking to do this tomorrow. But
I'm just thinking that it'd be done during a time of year where the grass is in its growing season and it will come through the sand and continue to hold the... You don't want it to be buried in the winter and not be able to continue to grow through while it's dormant. So
that's not the idea.
Early spring. I think the plan is not totally up to snuff in terms of what we normally want to see, but there's a prep, homeowners trying to do their own filing and trying to do a good thing here, that we can maybe give some latitude with that as long as we understand and put some limits on how this happens, like Leanne said, so that it isn't, doesn't create more of a problem than it's trying to solve. So it's just a question of how we could condition it so that they can do this. And one is to have a time of year restriction that is, obviously meets the plover, natural heritage time of year restrictions, but also occurs in the spring, not in the late fall.
What's the earliest you think you can plant there?
You could plant anytime because you can put the combs in, they're available. Best that time of year anyway. If you're going to do it in March, they'll be available.
Yeah,
say March 1st.
The company says from
March on. They're dormant
is the best
combs,
time.
so you can put them in.
Okay, so let's just say, let's just condition it. Let's say March, the planting will take place between March 1st and...
April 1st or something like that.
Yeah, when does the plover...
Yeah.
When was the natural
I think it's
heritage
April
start date?
15th. Did we give you a date?
While he's looking at that, I've got one question that I don't know really if it's more trouble than it's worth or how relevant it is, but when the grass is ready to put down, you know, the way the wind plays with things, is there a value to talking about maybe staging this, is doing like the first 6 inches in the spring and the second 6 inches in the fall? So that if there is some big play with the wind and we end up burying something further than it can handle, you know, arguably, it
I
would
would
be
say
better
that
off.
if it's buried further than it can handle, they have more planting to do. And if it's done in the spring and they can plant in the spring and have the whole summer to grow until, you know,
And then we could see
before
in the
hurricane
fall.
season shows up in the
Yeah.
fall, right?
Alright.
Most of the grass is probably 1.5 feet plus in height. As
So
is.
something will be sticking up anyway.
As is, right. So again, the idea is that, like he said, we're not putting a pile here to bury everything, that's not fair.
Yeah, if it's done carefully, then I'd be, you know, I'd be interested, that's a pilot project to see if that's something that can be done and doesn't require extensive replanting.
Okay.
Because I think if we put conditions on it that, you know, within 2 growing seasons, it has to have 75% vegetative cover, then.
And I think you answered this question already, Mary. But the idea of, is there value in, you know, in a manner of speaking, putting rulers out there to see, you know, how much the sand moves, or is it irrelevant, we'll just replant any bare spots that come up? You know, if it forms up any mini dunes or forms up any hollows, like.
There are lots of hollows there now.
Well, yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's natural.
Yeah.
Right, and
As the
so,
wind blows, it'll change.
it's just a curious thing, like,
Yeah.
does it actually functionally matter to track this kind of thing, or the sand is just gonna find its own level and no big deal?
No, but I think it's relevant to, you know, that we could request some monitoring reports with photos, you know, at the end of the first growing season and at the end of the second growing season. You know, or even in the spring of the second growing season, so that we could keep track of how it was, whether it was effective or not.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't just sit unvegetated for a long period of time. I'm sure that's not what you guys want, because it's not gonna help your houses, but,
Yeah.
we just have to craft a decision that
The-
factors in all the worst case
The
scenarios.
MISA restriction is April 1st through August 31st.
Yeah, it's pretty long.
So basically, you know, the ideal time of the spring is basically a month.
Right.
We can write it earlier, you know, in case you get a window.
Yeah,
You could, yeah, so we could do it, even December to March, because you can do it, you could do it in the winter.
Okay, good.
Oh, we could do the, theoretically, the nourishment in the winter and plant. The planting part is something we can do ourselves.
Right, and you can do that in the winter as well.
Right, okay, fine. So, but, you know,
Their plants are available and they're, you know, December, as long as there's no
Yeah.
snow cover, you can put them in.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, and there may, you know, there may be you know, I guess, my understanding is we would retain the choice to plant the grass and put the beach fencing in, even if we don't do the sand. I would just ask you, the idea of requiring us to do it in stages, to me, I would balk at that because it seems an unnecessary expense with no obvious benefit to me, respectfully.
Right, and there's no obvious benefit to me either,
Yeah.
just, you know.
So, again, you know, we don't want to damage it, you know, it's our resource, we're trying to protect and nourish it, and within the rules.
Right,
And
No, it's just as Mary said, you know, in a manner of speaking, with you guys doing this and being before us, is there an opportunity for us to, you know, pay attention and learn something and see what happens, and, you know, then, like, let's say the next time you come through, or the next neighbor who sees what you're doing says, hey, I want to do that too.
Sure.
You know, what can we pick up through this?
And in terms of monitoring it, you know, that's fine, you know, if you wanted to put a stake or whatever, I have to, you know, and I may even want to check with Professor Moore, because, you know, he's been doing, you know, obviously the Corps and UNH have been trying to monitor erosion levels, you know. I think we're in a hot spot. We are in a hot spot. I've been in contact with Tracy a lot about the Piscataqua sand that we're purchasing and where in the permitted zone that's going to get placed, because I think it ought to be in front of our homes from Center Island north, because that's where the hot spot is, and frankly, there are huge sandbars
there's now sandbars moved down, so you really don't want to touch,
To the
you
north.
shouldn't be touching that.
So, anyway, just, I think we have some opportunities to protect that area, and we're trying to do our part, to the extent we can, and, and frankly, some of our neighbors to the south, don't, and actively remove grass.
So we decided to go the right route to try to figure it out.
Guys, we definitely hear your frustration, and I just want to say from the commission, thank you for your patience with this, because it is, you guys are trying to do the right thing. And I wonder, Mary, on all of this, has anybody tried to do this type of work as an ER limited project? Have you ever seen that?
I have not.
I could see it being a rare habitat falling in. It definitely it protects one of the main goals. It enhances one of the main goals of the Wetlands Protection Act. It's going to fall into there. You're going to be able to find that, and then you could say it's a rare species habitat type. It's just going to be a question of whether or not DEP would say no because of an act of God type thing.
Yeah, there'd just be a little more hurdles for them to actually file it as an ecological restoration project, PR. So
Yeah, that doesn't make it any
would be
easier.
a little bit more complicated on their end to document that it qualifies and all that kind of stuff. So
I mean, we're
this is
hoping.
the easiest way to do it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, even though I'm a disinterested party and cannot vote on this, as a neighbor of yours on Plum Island and having planted over 2,500 sprigs of beach grass, please allow me to help you, okay?
Thank you.
And the less restrictions, the better, because you guys are doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And
We're
you're
not asking me to pay for it.
You're not, I'm not paying for it, no, but I'd be happy to come over and help you because I've done it, right?
And in fact, to this last discussion, I mean, our hope is, our understanding is this permit would be a 3-year renewable permit, if I'm using the right terminology. And, so our hope is that not only would we potentially do this once, but we'd retain the right to do it again, subject to whatever the conditions are, and also have presumably the paperwork in place if we ever need an emergency order or conditions or something. Because, for those of you who've been around a long time, you may recall, in 2009, my house was about to, I emptied it. I was about to go in, when the sandbag was in front of my house and, after the Bazada house went in. So I just, I don't want to go through that again. I want to do everything I can to protect it, that we can, to protect it. And I love the idea if this, I'm sort of shocked that it's a beta case, but if it is,
I'm really shocked.
Then how can we make it a positive experience for others to actually to encourage others?
It may not be a beta case just for us, this composition of the board. I think maybe Dan, you've seen.
Dan, you would know better.
Yeah.
Have you seen anybody on the island? No. Then it's beta.
Or
Dan hasn't.
Well, they haven't come to the
they might
board
have done
for
something, but it
permission.
wasn't with any permit.
Better, yeah.
Correct, they haven't come here.
Well, yeah, we
So,
know, yeah.
In terms of a renewable permit, if you apply for an extension 30 days prior to expiration of the order, then we have the ability to extend it for up to 3 years. But I think we would extend it only if it was documented to be successful, and
Right.
that
That's
you
fair.
apply, you have to make sure to apply before it expires, and we can't extend it, so.
So Mary, to that point, the technicality there, right? Because if they apply for an extension and they've got a COC ready project, right? Like if they've met their goal and their goal is fulfilled, right? Wouldn't we say, well, we shouldn't give you an extension, we should give you a certificate?
It's up to them, if they want to extend it so they can do it,
Well, if they were smart, they wouldn't apply for a certificate
Yeah.
of compliance. They would apply for an extension and allow them to
Well,
continue
right.
to do this.
The
But we
extension.
can't I think we can only grant extensions for two times, there's a limit to the
Correct.
extension.
Right.
It gives
But
a maximum
also-
of 5 years. Right?
Yeah.
But also for the project that they're proposing that they put down, like if somebody goes out and says, oh, you want the extension, and like nothing's moved since they put it in a manner of speaking, there'd be nothing to extend. You know what I mean? Like it'd be like building a house and saying, I want to
Just keep
extend.
the order open.
They're only gonna do that if they need to add more sand.
Yeah.
Correct.
Well, they have to do it to keep it open, because otherwise it
Correct,
blows.
yeah, but if they wanna add more sand, then all they do is apply for an extension.
These are the finer points of the WPA. We can
Yeah,
leave this for another
I
time.
Well, but we want to make sure we're clear, right? Because, not for nothing, it's cost us $1,200 to apply for this, right?
Yeah. It's gonna cost a lot more than that.
Wait till you buy the beach grass.
Okay, so
Yeah, so let's put a
So
motion
let's-
on the table,
let's,
and we can get into the weeds.
We have maximum 1 foot depth on the amount of sand
Yeah,
as a condition.
I've got some ideas on how to make sure that we don't have something go wrong on the access, and that's just simply I think there needs to be some limit of work that's defined. In other words, you've got a staging area, you've got, and maybe that's just staked out for whatever Mr. Hartnett needs.
And you remember the area where the majority of that is
Yeah, I mean,
between our two homes.
I really kind of wonder with you guys, what are you likely to do on either side by your houses there? Are you just, that
What do you
kind of,
mean?
it's a little rough, it seemed like. I don't know how much grass is there and that sort of thing in that location.
Very little.
What do you mean, between the houses?
Going, yeah, going up the hill.
Very little.
I don't know if you got any plans to try to improve that.
We're,
You're gonna plant
again,
it on the way, when you're done, you're planting.
Oh, of course.
Or replant, or replant anything that's damaged, but.
Yeah,
we want our home to look, we want it to look
Yeah.
nice, and we're obviously gonna
Yeah.
fix anything that doesn't,
could they use some straw wattles and just use that to outline the?
Yeah, I mean, just thinking, and then the mat, and then if Sam's willing, when the first trip up with a loaded Bobcat over these mats, just somebody there to kind of witness it and make sure that there isn't it's not going wrong, I think it could. John's pretty good, but
he said he had done it before, numerous times.
I've never, we haven't seen
He
it.
is, they're not filing for it, yeah.
We haven't seen it.
yeah, and so to your point about Sam, maybe we just write her into the OC, like the agent will come out quarterly to take pictorial images so that we can see how the thing progresses. Something
Well, we'll
like that.
take, I'll be happy to provide
Yeah, all right.
every 3 months.
Whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
We granted permanent easements to the federal government when they rebuilt that dune. So, everybody up to Uncle Sam has the legal right to be on our property to do that. It's fine.
So I think that we should have the order include a condition that says 400 cubic foot maximum over 6,500 square feet to no more than 1 foot depth. That's what you asked for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Time of your restriction of limiting work from December 1st to March 30th. Submission of monitoring reports with photos, December 1st following the first year and March 30th at the second year.
It might help, is there any reason we can't get into April for the planning?
For the planting,
Is there any reason why we can't?
Yeah.
Because they actually recommend.
Clovers.
do they say
But
that?
I thought it was after, I thought it was April, the end of
April
April.
1st.
It was
April
April.
1st,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
August
You
31st.
have to be off there, yeah. And then to set a limit of work, establish a limit of work prior to construction, and supervision by the conservation agent at the start of construction.
Sure,
That work?
sounds reasonable.
Oh, he said, all right, is it 1 foot or 1.5 foot depth that you're looking for?
I think it's 1.5.
Yeah, the plans for 1.5
think it's
tall at the
Okay,
moment.
sorry,
we're saying.
then 1.5. Sorry, and again, it was based on the discussion with John and other
Okay.
sources I've heard that says
Not more than
that's
1.5
not gonna
foot.
kill dune grass.
Okay,
That's probably my fault, I said 1 foot.
Yeah.
I apologize.
I apologize if I didn't clarify that sooner.
okay.
Thanks, good catch, Brad.
And, one other thing, I think if you're not gonna kind of do this till next spring, is that what we're talking about? I'd load that area, put snow fence, all those snow fence you can put in there and see what happens. I think I was impressed at the right-of-ways, the one that was really fenced.
Yep.
Was just buried, and the one that only had a fence on one side was not looking so good.
That's not our property, that's not.
No, I understand that, but I mean, it was a demonstration.
No, the fencing works well, except for the ocean side where it gets
beat up, yeah.
taken away, you know, in the storm, but,
I think those zigzag.
we put that up it again.
I would just recommend that, you know, if we
Yep, okay.
vote in the affirmative here and issue an order that would allow you to put snow fence up immediately.
Great, thank you.
Great.
We will do that.
Cool.
So you can add that snow fencing is acceptable.
Okay, so I'll take that as a first.
Second.
Excellent, all in favor, hands in the air? Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
Beautiful.
Oh, awesome.
All right, well, good luck, we're
Thank you.
obviously
Keep us
curious and
posted.
we're, you know,
I'll be happy
interested.
to relay back some positive news.
Thank you guys, really, thank you for your patience,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
If somebody who couldn't vote on it, I could still come on and help you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Yeah, you
Night.
too. What is left? David Manty, 0 Pine Island Road, map R30, lot 5, DEP 050-1330. An NOI to construct a dock pier ramp and floating dock within Salt Marsh Resource Area and ACEC.
Tom Hughes has requested another continuance. He is working on getting everything polished up and finished now that they've heard from DEP with regards to their requirements for the dock. So he's working on getting everything finished up before he presents it. But they will be here on the 21st.
Okay, so
Wait, so did DEP, are these outside of the original DEP comments? Or is this a response to?
It was in response to the issue with the water quality testing. That with the original plans, there was a requirement to do the 401 water quality testing. I spoke with Kyle Lally from DEP, who was reviewing the project, and he stated that as long as the dock is kept at 4 to 4.5 feet height, and they use, I believe it was 2-inch steel pilings as opposed to like the telephone pole style wooden ones, that they would not be appealing it.
Wow.
So as long as they conform with that, they do not need to do the water quality testing.
There's no
they should be
testing,
all set.
it's just
It's
water
cert-
quality certification.
Right, sorry,
certification.
sorry. Yes, they won't have to do the certification, so long
Okay.
as they conform to that. And I believe Tom is just finishing up to have the plans reflect that.
I think there was some coordination with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service too. Because
Yes,
there is-
he's, I believe he said he was giving them basically one last chance to make any comments.
Okay.
Okay,
So
so-
he's working on that right now.
Let's have a continuance before we start having a discussion.
Yep.
Until the 21st at 7 p.m.?
That sounds right.
Oh, you're beautiful. Who's gonna second this?
I'll second.
Excellent. All in favor? Ayes?
Aye.
Hands in the air? Great. All right. Hey, you finally got it. All right, so Dale Myers and Alliance Newbury 1 LLC, 75 Boston Road, DEP file 050-1339, request to reopen public comments on project for installing solar panels at the landfill. The issue with DEP has been resolved.
We received some correspondence from them stating that that's exactly what they wanted to do.
No show.
Not sure where they are.
Okay.
Continue.
Anybody gonna second that?
Request to reopen public comments.
I kind of wonder why this keep coming back.
Yeah,
This has been continued from.
I don't think.
Yeah, this was something that was here well before I was here, so I
We
don't
had the whole issue.
I don't really
So
know
with
anything
the
about
improper,
it.
the improper river.
We've already issued an order of conditions on this, and it was.
Yeah, but
Nothing
DEP
they-
asked us to reopen it, I think.
The DEP came in after, remember, we did it without the comments, and the DEP said, no, they didn't show the setback, and they didn't plan for the setback on Little River properly, and so they had to restart everything.
Well, I think they issued, they made those changes, added those things to the plan. I was happy with it the first time around, so.
Right.
I mean,
No.
I don't know why we want to listen to this anymore, really.
Right, I will get in touch with them and
So are we gonna continue this? You wanna make them re-notify?
But we can continue, but maybe you can determine whether they really even need to show
Okay.
up.
Alright.
Alright, so last one.
4 weeks. Continue it for 2 meetings.
Okay.
After the 21st to the
Uh,
the 10-5.
yes.
Okay. Alright, so who's the first? Anybody want to second that?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Ayes? Okay, good. 10-5, we'll see that. What is left? We're getting there. We only got 2 left. Michael Kirkpatrick, 8 12th Street, no DP number, an NOI to build a 9x15 shed on property. Pilings will be required to raise the shed 2 feet off the lowest elevation.
That's me.
Floor
Yeah,
is yours.
I don't have any drawings, so I had called an engineering company. They came down and took a look, and they said they'd have the drawings. So they're on the way. So once I get the drawings, I'll submit them to DEP, and I'll submit a set to you guys, and I should be ready by the next meeting.
2 weeks.
Two meetings.
2 meetings.
Oh,
You have yet to submit the plan drawings to DEP?
No, I haven't got them yet.
Yeah, I think that they're gonna take
Yeah.
at least a month.
I mean, in the spirit of not having you sit here for 3 hours
Next time.
next time, it might be simpler.
Oh, just to come to the second one?
Yeah, the October 10th.
Get them in as soon as you can.
Yes,
But
we're
submit to
working on it.
DEP as soon as you can, but DEP would then have to issue a file number before we can do anything. So-
Right.
I think, yeah, it would probably, just for your time, unless you're in a hellfire rush and wanna throw the dice on sitting through a long meeting again, to reschedule for the 5th.
All right.
That's your choice.
Well, wow, sorry I had to sit through all this.
That's
Sure.
Give me a little education.
Education, yeah.
Yeah. All right, well then, we need a motion to do that. We need a motion to continue.
I'll make a motion to continue to the 10-5 meeting.
Excellent. Do you have a second?
I guess. Yeah, second.
Thank you.
I don't know what.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks.
All right, thanks. And last but not least, Nathan Gray, 21 Cottage Road, no file number, a continued NOI to remove woodshed, fabric-covered steel frame structure located within the wetland resource area and restore the wetland. In addition, construct a new shed and greenhouse and a 100-foot buffer and remodel existing shed located partially within wetlands. Hi, what's going on?
Yeah, so I guess I apologize for not being here last time, but I promise it wasn't on my own accord. I said that she told me that I didn't have to come in one of the conservation meetings before. She didn't stay around that long.
I think there was a bit of a communication breakdown there, unfortunately.
Yeah, she told me I didn't have to come in because what I was, well, first and foremost, I've moved the structure out of the wetlands. I've seeded, 3/4 of it was seeded a couple months ago. It's growing up great. I just moved the last bit out of there and seeded it. So I'm in compliance now with that portion, so that's what I understand.
And I did drive by that actually today, going to look at another site in the.
Did you see me working on it? I finished
Yes.
it, I promise.
Yes, I did. And the only reason that I didn't stop and take any pictures is because you were still in the process
Yeah.
of removing everything. But I did drive by and everything has been removed.
This is the tent by the road?
Yeah, white
And,
tent, yeah.
all the wood chips are gone?
Yeah, wood chips by the road, you never said anything about removing wood chips, it was just the structures. None of it was inside of the space, there wasn't anything added, it was just soil and there was some sand underneath. I raked all that out and got that out of it because I used it as a leveling agent for the tent. I got all that out, got seed in there.
Okay. So that takes care of that, right? The structures and the seating business. What is going on with the septic?
So, I work with Tom Manta, and I guess I don't think he would ever, he got pushed back, I guess, some. He was diagnosed with, he had cancer cell removed or something. Waiting for him for his plan still. Dig safe has already been there, soil test is hopefully scheduled this week or next week. I just want to do the septic at this point, never mind moving around the sheds or putting in any additional structures. It's just a matter of doing the septic. I just want to get the plans done for it, get it approved by the town. it's not here or there, but I plan on selling the property, I just wanna get it all designed and approved, and
Yep.
I don't even know if I need an NOI number for that, so I think that I wanna, not that I have a number anyway, I don't know why, but I did hire someone to get me an NOI and do the NOI, but I don't know. So that's where I stand. I don't know if I need to continue with the NOI, or if I can just cancel it if it's that easy, or if I have to fill something out, I don't know.
We talked out in the hall a little bit.
All right.
And so one option is to just withdraw the notice of intent.
Okay.
And let us determine whether he's in compliance with the enforcement order, which was issued. And we can release the enforcement order, we can withdraw the notice of intent, come back whenever he's ready to file a notice of intent for the septic system. Or alternative, if the notice of intent has actually been filed at DEP and you've paid fees for it,
I did.
then I wouldn't withdraw it, and you can use that when your septic plan is ready and continue this for a
Yeah,
month or
you
2
can-
months or something, so that you don't have to start all the way from scratch
I
with
just
your
wondered why
filing
they never
fees.
issued the number, like, what's the problem with that, and
Yeah.
I can figure that part out.
Do you know, did you write a check and was it cashed?
Yeah, paid online,
Because if DP's got your money, then in a manner of speaking, you should be able to get a file.
yeah, it's $300.
I don't think something doesn't sound right.
Yeah, it's taking way too long, right? That's why
No,
I'm
that
thinking, if I
doesn't
just
sound right.
redo
If it
it,
was
if I had the
cash.
engineer, he said he would file one,
NOI
he's,
in the file.
No,
So
the fee has to go to a lockbox address, it's not you don't pay online.
okay, I did write a lot of checks to Bill Manuel too, and he did the
Oh.
first stuff for me.
Okay, well, so that he may be able to tell you where you are with the
Okay.
filing. I would
The,
contact him,
Either way, it sounds like something I gotta take care of.
yeah.
So the only notice of intent that I have in the file right now is to build a shed under 200 square feet, build a greenhouse under 200 square feet, install an above ground pool, install kids swing set.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's different than
And then I
this.
Yeah,
realized that.
I don't have anything for the septic yet.
Okay.
Yeah, so it'd be something completely different too, because I started doing that and then someone mentioned you should do the septic too, and you should add this into the whole thing, so it's all together, all at once.
That's different than
So
if
now I
the
just
septic
don't
was
wanna-
never included, then he's gotta pay a fee for the septic. That's different than all those other fees. Re-notify butters, because now it's been forever, so you might as well start from scratch. So I would
Okay,
say in that case, yeah,
I'll give them
Withdraw.
the $300, no, I'll try to get it back, but.
try to get it out, yeah.
It's been a long time.
All right, so then tonight we will,
If he accepts,
right, yes, if it's
if
worth,
you're making a request to withdraw the notice of intent, we can vote.
we can
what I
scratch
thought I
that,
was
and then we
doing
can
anyway.
start from scratch.
She also requests them to make sure that he's
In compliance with the
compliance
enforcement
with the
order.
enforcement order.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then there's a 6-month check too by Bill, he said he would do that, or whatever it is, come back and look at it multiple times. It was in the original
To
letter.
make sure that it's in compliance, okay, and that will transfer over to Samantha.
Because there was a whole restoration plan
Yeah.
that Bill Manuel put together, right?
Yeah, we worked on that
So long.
together too.
Okay,
yeah, so many little pieces.
okay.
All right, so then we've got the NOI, we've got the restoration plan and monitoring, we've got the enforcement order, monitoring and closing or
The
opening.
restoration is part of the enforcement order, I think, sounds like. Right,
Sorry, say it again?
the restoration plan was part of the enforcement order, that was required as part of the enforcement order?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, the letter, what I had to do it all.
Okay, so maybe we can get a report back at the next meeting on what the condition of the site is now and whether it's in compliance with the enforcement order, and if it is, and it looks good, then it's just a letter with a continuing requirement to do monitoring and reporting.
Mhm. Yeah, and then presumably it sounds like we've got a request to close out the current NOI that may or may not exist.
Yes, especially now that the septic system.
And then when you get your septic business put together, you can file that with the Board of Health and then bring us that when you, okay?
Yeah.
And then do we want to include any of that in the enforcement order? Right, we'll just leave that blank because it hasn't happened yet, no big thing. All right, were there any other pieces to this? I don't recall
I
any.
think so.
Okay.
No, but
It's just
you know,
all those activities that you know, the sort of pool or whatever, all that other stuff, none of that's gonna happen, right?
No, no.
Okay.
I've already bought another property and I put the pool there. And no more sheds or anything. There's an existing shed, I'll leave that the same and nothing else. I'm not gonna build anything other than get the septic system plan approved.
Okay, good.
Mr. Chair, I have to recuse myself from this item because it was engaged before I was a member of this commission.
Yeah, this one's been around a little while.
Yeah, very long. So I make a motion to accept the applicant's request to withdraw the notice of intent, is that correct?
Yes.
We did that first.
Okay. Second, first and second, all in favor, ayes?
Aye.
Okay, good.
And then I also make a motion that we schedule the enforcement order for the next meeting in order to provide time for Samantha to do an inspection and confirm that the terms of the enforcement order are met. And I don't think you need to come back to the next meeting.
No, I mean, I
Unless for
think,
some reason the septic is.
right, unless we have something to talk about.
Yeah.
So Sam, you just let us know if we need to talk to him, and you can let him know if there's something, a conversation point that we can't do over email.
And then, so then we can
So a certificate of
allow,
compliance.
I don't think there's we have to issue some sort of a letter to him saying that.
Yeah, we have to
there's
So
a-
the
formally,
certificate of
Right.
compliance.
Issue one for an enforcement order.
Right, to close the enforcement order, I believe it's just,
Just a letter.
yeah, a letter, and then I would send something to DEP saying that,
It's been closed.
yeah, we found it in
Satisfied.
compliance and
Yeah.
everything.
that's like.
As far as the notice of intent, where it doesn't have a DEP number, I don't think we would have to do anything for a certificate of compliance to just say that the work was never
Just take a note in the
done.
file that,
Yeah, that it's been
findings
withdrawn.
Yeah, that's all.
Right. Okay, good enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yay. One last thing on the agenda.
Okay.
You just make sure we have the right email, because my email's changed since we started on this.
Yeah, it's the,
House factory.
yep, did you get the email that I sent you this or this afternoon?
yeah.
Okay, yep, so that should be all set.
Yeah, I ended up as far as last. So I got that one too, so.
Excellent.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
156 Boston.
Okay,
Alright.
into discussion items. We have certificates of compliance. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nobody's here for them, alright.
Nope,
So-
I have all the pictures and everything.
So I'm just gonna open them all and we can just run
Yep.
through them. So for Don Johnson at 156 Boston Road, DEP file 0500595, COC request. Nathan Ketchell at 7 Morgan Avenue, the new police station, DEP file 0501297. Lafayette Woodlawn. Oh,
That should be Lafayette Woodlawn LLC, sorry.
oh, okay. Lafayette Woodlawn LLC, 104 Pine Island Road, DEP file number 0501026. Julie Simasco at 104 Pine Island Road, DEP file number 0501108. And Julie Simasco at 104 and 105 Pine Island Road, DEP file number 0501145. All right, finish up.
Mr. Chair, why are there two requests, two different people for the same address?
Because there are a lot
Different
of
project
open
number.
order of conditions for that particular address.
Applications for.
It also is arguably bad real estate lawyers that just
Awesome.
oversight.
That was Brad, that was ordinance.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I will not be voting on any of these. I was not a member of the commission at the time of their injury.
Some of these, nobody was here for it.
Yeah, you can vote on those for certificates of compliance.
So, for 156 Boston Road, this one's a little funny. It's very, very old, and we have absolutely no record of anything. All I could find was a COC issue, or an order of conditions issued in July of 2001 to the former owner of the property, Alfred Botticelli, and absolutely nothing else. There was nothing to indicate what the work was that was done. Based off of building permits that we located, we determined that the most likely reason that the order of conditions was issued was to build this shed that you can see right here. And as far as I can tell from when I went out there, So this is just kind of farther back. And then you can see the shed back in the corner over there. This is out behind the shed. This is actually not even located on their property. So I'm not 100% sure what the deal is with that, but they were the ones who built it. The building permit was issued to Alfred Botticelli for that address. So it's a little funky.
Do we have a request for a certificate of compliance?
Yes.
But they're requesting for, they don't know what they're requesting it for.
Right, so I discussed this with Alicia Galen, with DEP, the circuit rider, and she basically told me to go based off of what the building permits were, because no one has any record of what the work was, what the plans were, whether it was done satisfactorily, nothing, absolutely nothing. So she essentially told me to go out there, make my best educated guess of what the work was, which we believe it was the shed because it's just about the only thing that makes any sense. The other thing was for stairs on the front of the house and for a deck out back, which is on the other side of the yard, and I believe I have pictures of that as well.
Did you happen to check aerial imagery, historical, anything change?
Yep, and the only thing that really changed is these stairs, which are out on the front, and that's the deck.
And when was the house constructed, do we know?
I don't know when the house was constructed, but when I spoke with, actually I believe it was constructed in 1996 maybe, but when I spoke with Alicia, like I said, she basically just told me to make my best educated guess of what the order of conditions was issued for, go out there and make sure that nothing raises any red flags. As far as I can tell, nothing about the shed does. There's nothing to indicate that it floods or anything. There's no issues.
Are there any outstanding issues on the property?
No.
This is
the only outstanding issue.
Second.
All right, first and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next one.
This is the one.
Yeah, it's on.
So the next one is Nathan Ketchell. This is the new police station, and I have a lot of pictures. And I have the.
Well,
Sam,
let me ask you something.
Are we in compliance?
Sam, are we in compliance? Did everything, is there any issues that you saw that didn't go to plan?
Nothing about it raised any red
I
flags
make
to
a
me.
motion to approve.
I spoke with, someone was here representing the building committee for the police station. He was gonna stick around, but it got too late.
Yeah.
So you have as-built plans from the engineer with a letter saying everything was built according to
Yes.
plan.
We have a first.
Motion to
Second.
approve.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Next one.
I love that I don't even have to show these pictures, that's great. So for all three of the 104 Pine Island Road COC requests, as far as I can tell, I believe 1026 was to remove the existing single-family home and construct a new one. The existing single-family home was in fact removed, and there is no new one. One of them was to bury the utility lines for everything. They're all still way up in the air, so that was definitely never done. And the other one was to remove the existing garage and build a new one up on pilings. That was never done. That one also included re-roofing and re-siding the existing shed. It was not re-sided, but it has been re-roofed.
Is there an active building permit for any of these
There
items?
is an active order of conditions. I don't believe a building permit was ever filed, but there is an open order of conditions right now that was issued in 2019 that the current owners of the property wanted to keep open because they are planning on eventually building a new single-family house up on pilings, and that's what the open order of conditions is for. But they just bought the property, I believe, and they have no plans yet for what they're going to do.
So question, Sam, how do we give a certificate of compliance when an open order of conditions is there, and there is no work that has been yet performed.
The certificate of compliance is all for, so there's 4 open orders and conditions. The 3 COC requests are for all very, very old order of conditions that have all expired and were either not completed at all or only partially completed. The 4th open order of conditions was to build a new single-family home
Right.
on pilings, which it was issued to the previous owner, so it gets transferred over to
Are
the
they
new
requesting,
person and that.
are they requesting a certificate of compliance for that?
No, because
Okay,
they are
that's-
planning on still doing that work at some point.
That's not one of these 3 COCs?
That is not one of those 3.
We're just doing the certificate of compliance to close the order of conditions and make everything.
Well,
right.
But that's
Wait,
not a
let's make it
certificate
through
of
this one at a
compliance,
time.
isn't it?
So-
That's not a certificate, we should not be issuing a certificate of compliance for work that has not been performed with orders of conditions associated with it.
Yes,
do we?
you can, at the applicant's request, there's a box on the certificate of compliance form that says work was never completed.
Yes.
Yeah, we can just nullify the
Okay.
permit.
Okay, so you're removing the order of conditions.
You're basically saying, you
Yes,
yeah, because that.
Yes,
that also
closing it and
means-
saying the work was never
Because
done.
Thank you.
Yep.
Releases the lien.
My question is answered.
And that applies to the utilities.
Yep, the utilities were never buried, the electric lines are
Alright,
still
so
up,
And the construction of the house.
Resizing of the house.
and the construction
of the
was
house
never
area.
done. The garage was never removed and replaced.
Make a motion to
Wait,
approve.
before we do that, just one more thing. The last time we discussed these projects, these requests, there hadn't been a proper request for certificate of compliance actually filed in the filing fees and all that kind of stuff.
Correct.
Good point.
Now that's been done? Or-
Yes.
Okay.
The new owners that currently
Filed.
own the property, so I believe the previous owner was Julie Samasco. She never did anything. The current owner, who I believe is John Pelletier, has issued formal, or has filled out formal requests that I have all of them in the folders for all 5 of these.
And they are representing their current owner, because that was one of the
Yes.
issues, is that there was debate among the family members about some wanted to file a request for.
Correct,
certificates,
that
some
was
didn't.
the issue with Julie and Richard Samasco.
Okay.
But
But now just as long as I don't want to get in a position where we're issuing a certificate to somebody who is not the owner.
right, he is the current owner.
Okay.
They have purchased the property at 104.
Okay.
And I believe Richard Samasco still owns the property at 105 Pine Island Road. And I actually spoke with him when I went out there to do my inspections for these, and he is all for having them closed.
Okay.
So,
Alright,
and he was
Great.
one of the previous owners as
so
well.
then let's put this in order. So which one are we gonna vote on first and which one is it for? Let's do,
Lafayette Woodlawn.
so
DEP number.
1026.
Yep.
Alright, so 1026 is which project?
1026 is
The garage,
I thought you said
the
that was a
raising of the
single-family
building.
removal of existing single-family home.
Okay,
And construction of new.
But-
And the construction of
they
the-
raised,
But
but
you
did
said,
not.
Sorry.
you said they don't want a certificate of compliance for that project, though.
There were 2 different ones.
2 different single family.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Things got a little messed up with this.
Motion to approve
Got it. Okay.
Lafayette Woodlawn.
so your original question, this one was partially done and then partially not done.
Right.
So are we issuing a partial COC? Or are we issuing a full?
You
and-
can
or
issue a full COC and say that it
we just have to note
specified
that the work
some of the
wasn't
work was
finished?
done, some of the work was not done.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, alright, first and second,
Yes.
all in favor?
Aye.
Great. Alright, so then for 1108, what are we doing for 1108?
Utility lines.
1108 was for, the only work that was done was re-roofing the existing shed. So this was to remove the existing garage and build a new one on pilings, to re-side and re-roof the existing shed, and the only thing that was done was the re-roofing.
Okay, so then this is another full COC with the note saying that some of the work was never done?
Yes.
Okay,
Motion to approve.
alright, everybody in favor?
Aye.
Great. And finally, 1145,
And that was to bury all of the utilities.
which never happened.
Which never
So this is a nulling invalid.
Yes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Beautiful. And then nothing, we've got no extension. Other business, board reorganization / vote. So we have to decide who gets to be in charge of the meeting and all the fun
Yes,
stuff?
so this was, all of the boards are required to do this at the beginning of every fiscal year.
Yeah.
And when I spoke with Tracy about it, when she asked me if we had done it, I said I didn't believe we had. So we are required to do so, and she said that we can be allowed to have the grace of waiting until September to do it because there was so much up in the air with not having an agent and all of the other instability with the commission.
Okay, so then we need to vote on chair, vice chair, do we need secretaries and other various accoutrements, or just chairs? Or attendance, like we just need
Chair
to,
and vice chair.
Yeah.
anybody else want to do it?
You're so good.
I'm not sure about that, but I appreciate it.
We're used to it.
I don't know if being used to me is a good enough.
If you want, and I remain vice chair, we could also, if we're gonna go to 2 meetings a month, split the meetings.
I mean, whatever works. I like having you on I like you being goose.
Okay.
You're good at it.
Okay.
But you don't have to be goose, you can share. Anyway, anybody on this side, you want to be chair for 2 boards?
Yeah, one board is enough. One board is enough.
You guys,
I make a motion to have Brian be chair and Brian be vice
Second.
chair.
Damn it. Fine.
That was a second out of 10.
Who's in favor?
Right.
I vote nay.
Alright.
Alright, so then we need to vote on the vice chair too? Or
We did them both in one.
Okay, we just did it.
I do have one very brief, other business that for the board to consider, for the commission to consider. I am not alone in this, but I have 2 young children who are not able to be vaccinated right now. I would, my understanding is that we can move back to Zoom meetings or with permission of the board, the select board. I would like to make that request, both for, I think for a lot of reasons, for everybody's health and safety, and including my children who can't be vaccinated.
I was getting very anxious and tense just with like 30 people in the room.
So I do appreciate the board. We don't have to, we can vote on it next meeting. I'd like to vote on it tonight if people are comfortable voting on it tonight.
I did, for some reason, look to what other towns are doing. They're almost all of them.
They're almost all on Zoom, I know. Yeah, we're an outlier.
West Newbury is in person, but you have to wear a mask.
Yeah, I mean.
Salisbury, Zoom,
Topsfield, Zoom.
Everyone I looked at, with the exception of one, which was maybe West Newbury, was still Zooming.
Yeah.
So if I could maybe just have some conversation here.
Go for it.
My understanding is that appointed boards have to follow the direction of the select board.
Right.
The select board has taken the position that they want to continue with in-person.
Right. And so I think Ben's request would be board support for Sam to formally write something up and send a petition to the select board, or to Tracy to give us either an exemption or to give boards the ability to make up their own minds.
Just to revisit it in light of, I mean, they might have made that decision several months ago when conditions were different and, you know.
Right.
Because the planning board, because we're elected, we have the ability to kind of set our own terms. And so we'll be having that, that discussion.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that it's appropriate for us to be in a different format for a bunch of reasons.
I think it also, I mean, outside the safety stuff for the last 2 months with all these hearings where you're having to Zoom in, but you're not feeling well, or somebody can't make it, it just,
Yeah,
it
we
makes
lost a
things.
member for no known reason. He may
Right,
have had
Frank
back.
wasn't able to make.
Frank was, had requested to have me
Yeah, zoom him in.
and I did send him a link to it. I'm not 100% sure what happened
Yeah,
there,
who knows?
but I opened it up and never saw him.
Yeah, so I mean, I just think
So-
it adds a lot, it not only does that, but it adds flexibility so that if people have pressing issues,
Yeah,
then
poor TJ.
it's it's a lot easier, it's a lot easier to Zoom in than it is to.
Yeah, I mean, next time Mary has to recuse herself, she could be in another meeting.
Yeah. And speaking of that, I will not be at the next meeting,
Oh, fair enough.
just for quorum issues, so I'll be away.
Yeah, we might we'll need everybody we'll need the 4 of us to do anything next time. All these items, because you guys won't be able to vote on all these things that are dragging on. Okay, well.
And again, you can vote if you watch the tape of the previous hearing.
Yeah, but that's only if you were there for the start. If they weren't there when it opened formally, they can't backtrack. Yeah, it's like a really weird technicality that doesn't allow that.
No, that's how you rectify that.
Right, but if the item opened prior to their appointment and swearing in, then they can't backtrack to where they weren't sworn in.
I see.
Do we need to vote on this? Or?
I think we do need to vote on that.
Okay.
So I think I heard you as the first. Anybody want to second Ben's thought?
Second.
On the letter writing and the petitioning. Okay, so we have a first and second. All in favor? Hands in the air, eyes. 1, 2, 3. Let's see.
I saw noddings.
I saw generic like oomph, groans, and anyway.
Is there any nays? Are there any nays?
You can, yeah. Are there any nays?
No, abstain.
All right.
And we were going to take a vote on. I'm sorry. Did we finish that vote?
I think so. We just did the vote. Please ask and be cranky for us.
Yes.
Politely.
Politely, yeah.
Did we ever take a vote on setting deadlines for filing submissions prior to a hearing date?
Did we take a vote?
I already have that.
Okay, so what are you using?
As far as I'm aware, we don't have any, there was no vote ever taken, but our deadline in the office is that all filings have to be submitted 2 weeks prior to the hearing by noon.
Okay, good, because you have to get the legal notice in and everything written.
Correct.
So
And then all of the, all abutters notifications have to be sent out either certified return receipt or with hand signatures.
You can use certificates of mailing as well. That's different than certified mail.
Right.
Mary, do you want to
can
vote to back that up? Or do you think it's good
I don't
enough
think
as
you need
is?
to, because that's the practice.
And
Okay.
we're also requiring, just for the record, in case anybody watches this at any point, we are also requiring electronic copies of everything now. So when you submit files, especially large plans, because it has, we've determined, kind of become difficult for us to scan copies of large plans.
Yeah.
So especially for plans, we are requiring electronic copies of all of them to be submitted. As long as they're in before the meeting, before your hearing date, that's fine. They don't need to be submitted that 2 weeks prior, but we do need to have them.
I would like to have them all for our meeting, at least a week before our meeting.
Yes.
So I would say that if they could all be loaded, let people know that whatever they want us to see, we need to have in front of us.
So I think you need to tell them they need electronic things in 2 weeks, so that gives you a week to get them on SharePoint so that we have them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
And then also.
in that vein, Mary, do we want to just quick straw poll? Who wants paper copies of plans available for themselves? Take home, like come to the office, get a giant plan set to bring home. Does anybody have any interest in acquiring those?
And I will be bringing.
That's a no. Okay,
I
go
will
ahead.
be bringing all of the paper copies, because we have to have the paper copies anyways, regardless.
Right, you need one for the file system.
Correct.
But
So I will always be trying to bring the entire file folder with me to the meetings, which obviously doesn't help in the event of Zoom meetings, but.
And that's to my point, if we do end up going back to Zoom and an applicant comes in and says, how many paper copies do you need? We need one for the filing cabinet, but it sounds like nobody's interested in getting, everybody's happy with electronic.
I'm just having computer problems right now. I couldn't open even I could get the agenda on my phone, I could not get it on my computer.
Okay,
It
so then
just
at
went
least,
into a doodle.
so then at least one spare
And
until
I
you
can,
figure
and I
that
can
out.
always come down to the office and
Okay.
see Sam the
Right.
day of the meeting or before the meeting and get any of that stuff.
Right, so then you would want potentially a take-home copy, so we would need one for you and one for him, and the rest of us were good without.
And we do usually require 2 copies anyways,
Yes.
just
But-
to, in
In the past, it's been
for the
5
sake
or
of
6 or 7.
covering all bases,
Yeah.
just in case, so that, you know.
Less paper is better.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Now you have a checklist to give applicants, is that correct?
So I've been going through the MAP website, and trying to work up, some checklists and things like that, that are obviously there's a little disclaimer at the bottom that says that, depending on what your project is, there may be more, there may be less, but generally speaking, this is all of the stuff that you need to have and the deadlines that you need to have it by. And I'm also going to, again, once I get the credentials to be able to edit the website, I'm gonna put all of that stuff up online, as well as a sheet for each season, basically. So for the fall and winter, these are all the meetings that we're going to have, the dates that we're going to have them on, and this is the deadline date that you have to have everything turned in by.
I suggest that you have town council review that checklist before it's issued.
Yeah. And well, we can approve it as well. And there's plenty of samples from other towns on the websites available. One other point I wanted to make is just, procedurally, is we have a local bylaw that we're supposed to be administering, and it doesn't apply to some projects. Obviously, it only applies to Plum Island.
Right.
But I think notice of intents that are on Plum Island should either have a letter saying this bylaw, this is being applied, applying under the local bylaw as well, or they write on the top of the notice of intent form where it says Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, they can just write it by hand, and Newbury Wetlands bylaw, or whatever the title of it is, I forgot the name of it.
I believe usually on like the order of conditions stuff, it's Town of Newbury Wetlands bylaw, chapter 95.
Okay, so they just put that on the top of the notice of intent form, or have them, do that, or submit a letter, and then when we open a hearing for a project that's subject to the bylaw, we need to open
it under the bylaw too.
As well, because if you don't enact your bylaw and then use it in the public hearing,
right.
It doesn't have,
Yeah, that's a good point.
You need to make a motion to open the public hearings under both the Wetland Protection Act and the Newbury bylaw, and vote to combine the discussions.
So, going back to what Doug would do, I don't remember him ever doing it that way. And I don't know that it was just Doug, right?
I did get some legal advice about that years ago.
Yeah.
From another,
Like
because
if we had-
Topsfield used to do that, and they make you write.
Topsfield, I just did, you were just both in that Topsfield meeting, they said it verbally.
Yeah.
They do say it verbally.
They include
And then it becomes part of the
in
record.
so it's, if you read like the legal notice, it should say that in the legal notice.
I believe it does.
Yeah.
Actually, I believe it just covers the Wetland Protection Act. I don't think it covers the town bylaw, so we can add that.
Yeah. So, and because if we ever did decide to appeal a project, and we had no record that was actually ever invoked, then it might be difficult, so.
Use my pen?
No. This is the kind of thing that perhaps what we could say is just put something on the agenda to that effect, right? Like under the WPA and, for Plum Island or as appropriate or something under the bylaw.
Sure.
So it's also, it's in triplicate essentially.
Yeah.
Put it on the agenda, put it on the,
That way, when you read it, because you're reading the agenda, you can,
the
prompt you
presumption is
to
made.
say that.
Mary, with all due respect, I suggest that you also talk with town council about that.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Not that I don't believe you,
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
believe
that's
having a
legit.
legal opinion about it.
Yeah, that's what you're paying her for, so.
Right.
Yeah.
And I am, TJ was actually not originally supposed to represent 53 Northern today. It was originally supposed to be Matt from Millennium, but he called us this morning and said that he had a sick family member. So he was asking if there was any chance that he could be zoomed into the meeting to represent that project. And I know that we're allowed to make exceptions for board members because we need them for the votes, but I don't know if we can make exceptions for applicants. So in the event that, we can't get the exception to go back to all virtual meetings for conservation, that's something that I'm waiting to hear back from town council about as well. So I can bring all of this stuff up to her, or to whoever gets back in touch with me. I did reach out to Lisa Mead this morning, and I'm assuming that she wasn't working today because I never heard back from her. So I can address these issues as well. when I speak to someone about that.
Alright. And then, at least for me, the last procedural thing, I think, regarding the Dropbox, I went in there,
Yep.
and I don't know if you have the time, but let's, like, if we're not doing it, kill it.
Okay.
And unless it's for the next live meeting, right, like, yeah.
Just have like a resolved folder and take all the old stuff.
No, just ditch it, just can it. Like, if you wanna keep it, copy your file, bring it to your own hard drive or whatever. Like, let's keep that clean and empty, because I don't know how many Dropboxes you run.
Fair
Where they
enough.
keep bumping into each other saying, you know, you're 15 gigs over.
You're right.
Could you send that link again too, because I don't have the link. to
Yeah, I
the
can,
Dropbox.
I'll send it out to everybody again, because it seems like we're having a couple issues with the Dropbox access. Did you ever get access to
Yeah, I
it?
think it depends on what emails you have assigned.
Okay.
If you already have one assigned, they collide.
Correct.
So, yeah, you have to have like separate
We're-
emails per.
Okay, were you ever able to
Yeah,
get it
also-
with the,
also,
okay.
yeah. It
All
killed my
right.
battery tonight.
Yes.
Alright, good.
Is that what we're
Alright.
continuing to use going forward, Dropbox?
I
Yeah,
believe
but
so, and I would assume that regardless of in-person or virtual meetings, that we would continue to use that. It seems like it's one of the easiest. The only other option that I could think of would be Google Drive, but I don't think Google can support that much.
Is it password protected?
Google,
No. the
Dropbox.
Dropbox, you
Yeah.
just have to have the link access to it. So it
So
has
it's
to
not
be
open to
shared
the
with
public?
you.
No.
We can share stuff with the public, so if
It's
we
linked to our
wanted to.
individual emails, the 7 of
Right,
us.
so when I sent, all the information to Ann Martin, because the files for Cricket Lane were huge, I couldn't email them to her, so I just sent her a link to the Cricket Lane file, so she only has access to that, she can only see the Cricket Lane file, but I set it up so that, you know, she would have access to everything that we have for it.
Awesome.
Yeah, it works.
Thank you for.
Sam, you're doing a
continuing.
great job, thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn.
Hallelujah.
There's a second to that.
Alright, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.